62,340,000 on the capital side. Mr. President, if you would permit me, before going forward, my arrival here today was delayed. I didn't make it for the 10 o'clock starting time, and indeed I missed some of the presentation by the honorable member opposite, and I believe this is her first budget presentation, and I want to say congratulations. I was able to get a bit of it via the World Wide Web on Facebook, thanks to NTV. And I want to give a big shout out to NTV for being here to cover all of this. And they do such a professional job. I think they deserve a round of applause. I think NTV has come a really, really long way. You know, to now we can be speaking, and you not only have to be glued to a television, but you can also be on your mobile device, and you can see everything crystal clear and hear everything as nice as possible. I would also like to give a big shout out to Van Radio. They have been with us for a very, 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 very long time, and they have done yeoman service for the island of Nevis. Certainly, every time we have had meeting here in the House of Assembly, they have always been here to cover. So I was able to get a bit of the morning session. But, Mr. President, I was absent because I was at the High Court. My youngest brother was being called to the bar this morning, Dejan Alaibu, so I want to say congratulations to him. No, I wasn't sued this time. So that was my reason for being a little bit late this morning. But I think I was able to get some of the presentation, and through the wonders of technology, during my lunch time, I was able to listen, you know, because I wanted to be apprised and educated as to what was said. So, Mr. President, let me congratulate the Honorable Premier and the mover of the bill for presenting, I don't want to use the term wonderful, because we all know the circumstance. We all know the times that we are living in. We all know that we've been under the scourge of COVID-19. It popped out pretty much out of nowhere. It was really, really unexpected. And so the Premier, Minister of Finance, and his team at Finance, they have been managing the situation. And so I want to give him props, and I want to give his team props for coming up with what is a workable budget that can continue to move the island of Nevis forward going into 2020. So kudos to you, Mr. Premier, and to your team. You see, Mr. President, we are still a relatively young nation. We only got independence in 1983. And there are nations in this world that have been here for a very, very long time. So they had a big head start on us here in these small islands. So we're just getting independent, and we are very small. So we have had to cope with the same situations that these large countries have had to cope with. And we have not been doing bad. I think we have gotten 25 cases of COVID so far. Am I correct? 25 COVID cases in St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is not by any accidental happening or just because it happened like that. Because if we look at Antigua, close by, they've had over 100 cases. If we look at St. Martin, close by, just a few minutes away, they have had hundreds of cases Mr. President. So it has to be because of the clear policies that the government has been putting in place. And I want to say congratulations to the task force on a job well done. They have been working tirelessly, day and night. Mr. President, we have never since independence, and I don't know about before, but we have never, since St. Kitts and Nevis has become a country, since we have had the benefit of the Nevis Island administration in Nevis, we have never had to deal with a situation even remotely similar to this one. So, for anybody to come and say that we might be using COVID-19 as any type of excuse is unconscionable. Because, Mr. President, COVID-19 has pretty much taken over everything around the entire world. Everything being done now, COVID-related. Mr. President, last year at this time, when we were delivering the budget, could you have ever imagined a situation where we would all be plunged into lockdown and be told that you cannot leave your house from a certain time in the evening until a certain time in the morning? Could you have ever imagined that you would have been told that you need to go inside on Monday morning and you can't come back out until maybe Friday? If somebody had come to me last year, this time and told me that, you know what I would have said? That can't happen. That could never happen. But it has happened. It has happened, Mr. President, because of COVID-19. And it's not just in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's all over. Everywhere you look, the world around, the same thing had been happening from Russia to China to Australia, wherever you go. That was the state of affairs. And even though, Mr. President, that was the state of affairs, some persons have not been as lucky as we have been. So we have to give God thanks for his mercies on us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We haven't recorded any deaths due to COVID, knock on wood. Thank God. And we hope that that continues to be the case. But so many people, so many places around the world, so many families have been torn apart because of this. And so, for anybody to say that any reference to COVID could be seen as some sort of excuse is nothing less than unconscionable, Mr. President. So, President, last year, this time I was busy looking ahead to 2020 and feeling good because we had heard from the tourism industry that they were expecting their best year ever. Am I correct? Yes. That is what we heard. And so I was very optimistic that all of the plans that we had in education, that we would have the financing to execute them. You see, Mr. President, this is a budget we are debating. The budget is all about money. And it doesn't matter what department or what ministry we are in. It comes back to dollars and cents to turn the wheel, to get things going. If we don't have the money, we simply can't get things done. And what COVID did was to take all of that good feeling that we had, all of that expectation that we had, and it just decimated it. The hotel industry closed down. Closed down. I can tell you, I know the Honorable Premier had been in constant communication with persons in the industry, speaking with them. We are hopeful that you might be able to open at this time. Let's see how it goes, because, Mr. President, there was no roadmap for how to deal with COVID. Nobody had ever experienced anything like that before. We did not know where it was going to end up. I'm sure that if you asked all of the renowned top experts the world around in the early days, in February and March, they would have told you, hey, maybe in 3 to 4 months, we would be over this. But we are in December. And if you look at what's happening in the United States, they're having more COVID cases now than they had in March and April. It is now on the rise. This is the rebound of the COVID. We have heard that there are vaccines that are now promising. We have heard that they're trying to get approval for these vaccines, and that hopefully in the near future, we would be able to have some reprieve. But, Mr. President, the truth be told, these are just suppositions. We don't know if it's actually going to change it. We are going to have to wait and see. Mr. President, in my little reading and in my thinking about this, and thanks to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education and the PEO, Principal Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, both of them are here this afternoon. They have done an exceptional job this year under really, really trying and testing conditions. They have been put through the fire and tested, and I'm very, very proud of them. So, President, you familiar with Charles Dickens, 19th century writer? In one of his works, very popular piece of work, A Tale of Two Cities, that speaks about the French Revolution, he said it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Mr. President, I think that he summed up our experience in 2020 quite succinctly. Here, Mr. President. So in 1830 or 40, when he was writing, he didn't know that this was going to happen. Now he was speaking about the French Revolution. But his words have pretty much summed up what we have been going through in 2020. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. And that is what each and every one of our ministries has had to deal with. You listened to the budget, you heard about the rebound in agriculture. And everybody is now looking to get into agriculture, because people realize that there are opportunities. And I want to give props to the Minister of Agriculture, because earlier this year, I listened to him speak about some of the numbers on the improvement in agriculture, and we're hearing about improvement in certain crops on the level of 1,000%, 2,000%. And Mr. President, you might say, well, talk about education. But yes, I'm talking about education, because school meals is a big part of education, and I will talk about that a little bit later. But we are now able to supply our schools with locally grown products on a scale that we couldn't before, because more people are getting into farming. And it is important that we eat healthy and we eat local. So everything is tying together, Mr. President. Mr. President, every other ministry in the government has had to face challenges. But I think in education, it's a little bit different. And education stood out this year because back in February and so on, when we just started, and this is a COVID budget, so you're going to hear me talk a lot about COVID, because that's the theme. Back in February, when we were focused on all of the good things that would happen in 2020, all the things that we wanted to see happen, the school sports were in full swing in February. We were able to get, I think, all of the preschool sports happened. We were able to get the primary school sports to happen. I went to most, if not all of them. We were able to get the high school sports in, the 2 public high schools and the private high school. We were able to get the high school inter-high that we partner with the Ministry of Sports on. And I wanted to say thanks to the Ministry of Sports for that partnership. We were able to get all of those things, and we felt like we had some momentum. And then COVID picks up, and we are down the road, far down the road, planning our major event, the Inter-Primary, what we dub as the Mini Olympics. And then we get stopped in our tracks because of COVID. And we had to postpone. We didn't cancel, Mr. President. We didn't cancel. We postponed. And we are now in December, and the event has not happened yet. You see, because with the knowledge that we had at the time, postponement was the thing to do, because we did not know if come summer or come September or sometime later, we might be in a position to have the event. It's a big event in Nevis, and we were already planning that 2020 would have been bigger than 2019. And 2019, I am told by a lot of people and by the gate receipts that it was the biggest inter-primary ever. Our students were looking forward to run on the Mondo track. Every time the sports officers would meet me, they would say, "Hey, Minister, the inter-primary going to happen?" And, Mr. President, I mean this, because up till last week, one sports officer met me, and he said, "Well, we're not going to try to do inter-primary before the year end." And I smiled, because the situation doesn't allow for it. I believe that it is this week or last week that the task force met to implement some more stringent rules. I think something like 150 per event, 150 persons maximum at any event. So even now, things are still being reworked, because even now we are unsure. The borders have now been opened for a little while. And with the opening of the borders, I think we have gotten 5 new cases. All of them have been contained. Grateful for that. People have been in isolation and so on, and we haven't seen that community spread. But we still have to be cognizant of the situation, Mr. President. So that is where we were in February and March, looking to have inter-primary, and then we had to cancel. And then what happened shortly after that? We got our first case in the Federation. And school was brought to an abrupt halt. No more in-person classes, Mr. President. We had to stop. And you could understand, Mr. President, that you are going along and you are presented with a situation unlike anything that had ever happened before. You could understand that there would be some bit of confusion. You could understand that people would not have all of the answers immediately. You could understand that if school goes off on a Wednesday, it was a Wednesday, I believe it was a Wednesday, that you won't have all of the answers by Friday or by Monday. And anybody who wishes to insinuate that something like this could happen on a Wednesday and that you should have the Ministry of Education or any ministry anywhere in the world should have all of the answers by the following Monday, I can tell you that they don't have a clue what they're talking about. Anybody who can say that that should happen is somebody who does not understand managing any type of system where you have different moving parts and a lot of people. It is a big ministry. We got nurseries to look over, and I will talk a little bit about nurseries. Preschools to look over, primary schools, secondary schools, the sixth form. And I won't go into adult education, because adults could look after themselves. That's a primary school. It's an integrated school. Yeah. But let me say, Cicely Brown, integrated school. There are lots of different moving parts, Mr. President. So you don't expect that COVID-19 comes in and everything closes down on Wednesday, and that by Monday you would have all of the solutions, or in the next 2 weeks after that, all of the teachers would be trained in the selected online platform and be able to go out and administer teaching. It takes time. We have a lot of teachers in the system who are not native to the internet, who are not technology natives, technology non-natives. We have some young persons who could slip in and understand the technology quickly. But, Mr. President, you have to understand that everything has to be put in place. You have to first teach the teachers how to access and use the platform. You have to migrate all of the students onto the platform. And I even went a little bit ahead of myself, because you have to first designate a platform, because there are many different platforms out there. I think when the pandemic first hit us and school first closed down, we started using Flow Study in partnership with Flow, our telecoms provider, one of our telecoms provider. We started to use Flow Study. And Flow Study is basically a self-paced platform. They have access to coursework, various different coursework that you would get done in the different classes. And so students could go on to the platform and do the coursework pretty much in their own time, self-paced. And that, Mr. President, we used as a quick stopgap. And in working together with the Federal Ministry of Education, we came to the understanding or the conclusion that we would go with Microsoft Teams as our chosen platform. But that did not mean that some of our teachers weren't doing other things, because there were some teachers who were already acquainted with Zoom and with other Google platforms and so on. And so they used them to reach their students. We had students who were preparing for overseas exams, for the CSEC and for the CAPE exams. And those teachers, they knew that there was a limited time frame within which they needed to get their students ready. So some of them, they did not wait. They went ahead and used the platforms that they were familiar with. And we have to really, Mr. President, support our teachers. We have to really, Mr. President, thank them for the work that they put in under these circumstances. Mr. President, a lot of persons could have gone home and said, well, I'm staying home, I'm going to button in here, and I'm going to watch television. School is out. I'm not going to worry about what's going on. But our teachers are dedicated, and they knew that they have the students, and the students need to get the work done. So for those students who are preparing for exams, the teachers continue to go the extra mile with them. There are a lot of unsung heroes in this COVID-19, you know, Mr. President. A lot of different things happened. It's not an easy thing to just come and sum it up, or to just come and say that schools didn't get online until June, without understanding the situation, without realizing that we were not, in February and March, the online platform was not something that was at the forefront. We weren't thinking about going online. It is something that came abruptly. Of course, Mr. President, we have always been looking at the integration of technology in the classroom. We have always been looking to go in that direction. But COVID-19 gave us a jolt. It said to us, you have to get there right now. And so, Mr. President, you would understand that it would take a little time from where we were starting off to get to where we are now. But thank God, Mr. President, we were able to bring the Microsoft Teams online. We, through the prudence of the policies set out by the government, we were able to keep the cases of COVID-19 down, and we were able to get to the position where we opened schools for face-to-face teaching and learning. And that, Mr. President, I think, is the ultimate goal that we were working to get back to. There are many places, Mr. President, big, small, first world, second world, third world, that students have not been able to go back into classes up to now, and we are in December. And here in Little Nevis, and in our Federation, St. Kitts and Nevis, we were able to reopen schools in September, on schedule for when it would have opened in a normal year. And that, I think, Mr. President, is not something that we should just skirt over. We should not just skirt over it. It's an important thing, because all around us, we have other islands and other jurisdictions where they have not been able to do the same. And I'm not going to let anybody come here, or anywhere else for that matter, to say that we have not performed admirably, to say that the folks in education and the folks in health have not done a good job. It would be unconscionable. I couldn't countenance it. Not that I'm going to drop any word on anybody, but I'm just saying. Can't countenance it. If you have to criticize, what you can say is, I think we did an okay job, but we could have done better. That's fine, we don't mind criticism. So, Mr. President, when school went out, because this is a back and forward type of thing. And I have a lot of time this afternoon. I have a lot of time this afternoon. And you all know once I get a little warmed up, and once I have some water, I'm good. So, Mr. President, when school went out, the Ministry of Education, they were on the ball. Before school went out, they had the teachers prepare some packets so that they, just in case school went out, they would have that work to go home and do. So when it went out, they had the packets. Surveys were done among the students to find out who had internet at home and who had access to computers and tablets and devices that they could do online learning. The good folks at the department and the good folks in the school, they were thinking ahead. So those surveys were done, and they got the results. So we knew when the whole thing came crashing down and school had to be closed, we knew who the vulnerable students were who did not have access to internet. And the government, Mr. President, took the decision. The Ministry of Education, working in concert with the Ministry of Education and St. Kitts, discussed these were the needs. And the government, Mr. President, paid for internet connections for over 50 homes, because those were the homes, Mr. President, that needed the internet. So for anybody to come here and say it's only 50 homes, so what are we supposed to do? Connect the houses that already have internet? It means, Mr. President, that people in Nevis are not doing so badly, that whatever our circumstances are, we find the money to put in the internet so that our children can have access and so that we can have access. So when the survey was done, we realized that in these 50 homes, we needed internet. And so the internet was put in, and the government paid for the first 3 months.
Excellent. Helping those who need it most.
So, Mr. President, you know, so, Mr. President, part of this same initiative was to bring some tablets. We thought about computers, am I right? We thought about phones, and I think that the experts in the ministry, and we have some experts in the ministry, both here in St. Kitts and Nevis, competent people. So it was not Troy Liebert making the decision. Was it competent experts who made the decision? And we listened to their recommendation, and we followed their recommendations. You see, Mr. President, sometimes things happen, and they happen top-down, and they are good. But sometimes it's good to listen to the persons who are trained in the particular field, because they have insight that you might not necessarily have. That is their area of expertise. And so the experts, having met and consulted with the service providers, came to the decision that they would import a particular type of tablets. And I think this was done through Flow. And here in Nevis, we got 300 of the tablets. And these tablets were to be distributed to the students who did not have access to the devices. So while, Mr. President, only some 50 homes did not have access to the internet, we had more students who did not have access to the devices, some 300. So we were able to loan those out to the students. And the loan was based on the recommendation from the experts who thought that that was the best or the preferred way to go. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, I will say it here. Several persons approached me. Minister, I need to get one of those tablets that you all have up there. I have a youngster in school. Need to get some of those tablets that you have up there. So I said, no problem. Go up to the Ministry of Education. There is a sign-up. You would need to sign up the school that the child is in and all of that. Oh, me got to go through all of that, me no bother one. Me gonna buy mine. You understand, Mr. President? What was done here was based on the surveys that were done before. There was an assessment of need, and it was done based on need. Not a free-for-all, Mr. President. Done based on need. We can't just do things frivolously, you know. You can't just do things just for do things' sake. There has to be some method behind it. And so this government will listen, and we listened to the experts, Mr. President. And the initiative did not just stay there. Because we know Nevis people, we're an independent type of people. And so there were individuals out there who did not want the particular tablet, or the school child might have already had access to some sort of device, and the parent felt, I want to get an upgrade, or I want to get a better device for my child. And so the government took off the duties and the taxes off of the devices, the tablets and the computers and so on. I think initially it was taken off until September. But the initiative was continued until the end of the year. Until the end of the year. And so, if you are a parent or a guardian or somebody who has a young person of school age and you want to buy them a device, you can get it duty-free. And Mr. President, these are the policies of this government. We are not just looking to do things for do things' sake. And you know, Mr. President, when you buy something, you're going to carry it. And so we are putting people in position so that they can help themselves, Mr. President. So when you see, and it's worth saying again, you know, because repetition is important. So when you see the surveys done, and you say there is a need for 50 homes, small number, to be connected to internet, the government is not going to go out there and connect 500. It's 50 needed. Okay? So when you say the number is only 50, it's based on the results of the surveys. We listen to the experts. We don't just get up and say and go connect Tom, Dick, Harry, and Jones. We listen to the experts. Mr. President, a few things in here that I wanted to mention. I believe in the mover's budget, in section 5.1, when he started education. I think the budget says the Ministry of Education continues to hold true to its goal of education for all, embracing change and securing the future, Mr. President. That's in section 5.1. And that is exactly what we are doing, embracing change. And we have had to embrace change because COVID has brought change on a type of level that we had not seen before. And I want to congratulate the ministry, and I will keep saying it, because they have risen to the occasion. The permanent secretary and the PEO and all of the EOs and the principals and the teachers and the librarians and all of the other members of staff in the school, we got to congratulate them because they have risen to the occasion. Mr. President, when you go up to Charlestown High School now, they're up there early in the morning because school starts early. They're on the shift system. Same thing at Gingerland Secondary. They're there early. I myself have not gotten accustomed to the fact that students are in school until after 4. So sometimes I'm driving in the area, Gingerland Secondary, and I see students coming out after 4. And I have to stop and remember and say, oh yes, school is just going out. So the teachers are coming earlier and they are leaving later in some instances. And we cannot demean or belittle that. They are hard-working people and they deserve every commendation. So, Mr. President, from the time school went out, we always looked at how are we going to get back to in-person classes. Because as good as any platform is, as good as any online, they call them software is, nothing quite makes up for that face-to-face being in front of the students. You know, sometimes in dealing with children, you have them in front of you, and they're hard to control. Much less when you are in front of a computer, in front of a camera, and they are somewhere at home. You're not going to be able to control all of them. So we were always looking for the ways that we would be able to get back into school. So in working the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education, together with the task force, all through the summer, working together, they realized that certain things needed to be put in place for us to get school back on. And Mr. President, I could tell you, there are many times I can recall that the permanent secretary would be in my office daily, and he would be going like the Energizer Bunny, back and forth, back and forth. So many different things were happening, and so many different things needed to be put in place. So the schools, we were able to open in September, and we didn't have a hitch, right, Mr. Pierce? Not a hitch. Strict sanitizing protocols were put in place. Hand washing stations were built in all of the schools. So at the entrance of each school, when you're going in, you have to hand sanitize and so on. And I want to say thanks to the maintenance team education maintenance team, they worked really, really hard throughout the summer to ensure that all of these things were in place so that come September morning we could open back school. And I feel good about it. So, President, you know, social distancing now is a big thing. Before 2020, I don't think I had ever heard the terminology social distancing. If I had, it might have been just in passing. But I don't remember that I did. But now social distancing is the norm. And in some of our classes, especially in the primary schools, some of the smaller classes, the infant classes, the students sit behind these double desks. So, you know, 2 students would occupy 1 desk. A simple thing like that is something that persons could have looked over and not realized it's an issue. Because how are you going to social distance when the desk is only so big and the students have to sit behind the desk? So these are situations that we had to deal with. We had to find desks. Luckily for us, we were able to partner with a local service provider to get some desks locally built. An idea that came from the permanent secretary. And I want to give him props because, as I said, working all day, every day, like the Energizer Bunny, getting these things done. Something as simple as desks, so we could separate the students from each other, get that 6-foot separation. All of our school buses, Mr. President, because remember, the students couldn't just go and travel and sit like they would normally sit. We had to get a bus custodian to sanitize the students when they come on the bus and to sanitize the bus between trips. Because remember, Tom Jones can't sit in the seat and then the bus go back for another trip and then John Brown sits in the seat, in the same seat. The seat has to be sanitized. So we had to hire persons to work on our 6 school buses. And the buses had to make more trips. And Mr. President, I think it's fitting at this time that I said that we are in the process of acquiring some more buses. We were able to partner with a private charitable donor to get some buses. They should have been here this month. But we were told by, and I wonder if I could call their name, TDC, who's a supplier for Toyota, that the buses, because of COVID and whatever schedule they have with the boats, that the buses would not be here until mid to late January. So we can expect 2 more buses immediately. We expected them in December. We thought they would be here for the new school term, but they won't be here until mid to late January. And then not too long after that, perhaps middle of the year or so, we expect to get another 2 buses. So, Mr. President, we can expect in short order to move from 6 buses to 10 buses. That's some forward thinking.
Oh, yes.
Keep the momentum.
Just in case,
That's all we do.
just in case something were to happen again, then we could jump immediately because we were thinking ahead. Okay, Mr. President? We would be in a position to move immediately. Because we saw, or we have seen what has happened now. And so we won't be caught in the same situation again. So here in education, we have been planning. Now, Mr. President, to talk a little bit about the early childhood, a little bit about our preschools. Because, you know, when COVID-19 hit and we got into the lockdowns, school was out. Preschoolers, when the preschools went out, somebody has to be at home to look after those children. School is not just a learning institution. School is a place where we also send our children so that we could have the opportunity to go out and work and make a living. And they are taken care of in school or at the nursery or at the preschool or wherever, whichever institution they are at. And we know that the older students, perhaps, the high schoolers and so on, could perhaps go unsupervised. But the younger ones, the most vulnerable ones, somebody has to be at home with them. Somebody has to be at home with the preschoolers and the babies. And so when school went out, it meant that a lot of persons who had young children had to stay home. They could not go out to work. And so for a very long time, while our preschools and our daycares were out, a lot of parents could not go out and earn. Some were fortunate enough to be working in institutions where they continued to get pay, but others were not. So we wanted to get our early childhood centers opened. And spacing was an issue. Because, you know, these are children and they have to have a certain amount of space. And for some of the institutions, you know, they had been a little bit overcrowded. But in the past, you know, the system had sort of looked over some of these things. But with the coming of COVID-19, the rules had to be the rules for everyone's safety. So some of the centers were told that your limit was, let's say, 20, where last year you would have had maybe 29 or 30 students. And so that in itself presented some challenges for us. The ministry worked together to, you know, inspect all of our centers. They worked together with the task force, with the Safe Schools Committee, with the Child Probation and Welfare Board to allow the centers to open. And the government, realizing that we had more students than some of these centers could hold, especially here in the Charlestown area, we were able to quickly put something together to open a second phase of the Charlestown preschool. And that phase was able to open on September 7th, first day of school. And I think it opened with 40 students? 40 students. So we were able to pick up that slack from some of the other service providers. But Mr. President, what we did, we just said to the service providers that the rules were the rules and we had to follow the rules because health has now been put at the forefront. It should have always been at the forefront, Mr. President, but COVID-19 has put the focus on it. So if the rules say that each student must have a certain square footage of space, then that is what we had to do, Mr. President. And so we have been able to open our early childhood institutions. And Mr. President, while I'm on the early childhood centers, you know, when I listened to the replay of the honorable member opposite from this morning, I was a little bit disheartened by something. And I do not believe that it is her fault. I believe it's what she was told by whomever would have come to make the complaint. And certainly, the parliament is a place for you to highlight certain things. But I would say, in general, about information. You see me, Mr. President, whenever I get some information and I cannot verify the information, I leave it right where I get it. Wherever I pick it up, I just leave it there. You know? If I can't verify it, I am not going anywhere with that information. Because sometimes when somebody comes to you with a message, you got to examine the messenger. Yes. And you have to ask yourself, I wonder what them they want. Exactly. And you have to ask, what are they trying to achieve? What are they trying to put me in? They're trying to set me up? You have to ask yourself all of these questions before you decide to pick up that little tidbit of information. It might not even be anything significant. So if you had left it alone, who cares? It would not have come to anything but to pick it up. So let me correct the record just a little bit, because it is important, Mr. President. So our early childhood centers are our daycares that are registered public daycares. And I think we have 18 registered nurseries, 10 registered preschools. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm correct there. 18 registered nurseries and 10 registered preschools. And while we have put the legislative framework in place, and we have gotten the kudos for that, and I'm thankful for that, we have also put out that other hand to help them even financially. One of the policies of this government has been really education is from birth coming up. So we have indeed extended that other hand. As a matter of fact, we standardized it recently because we met something that was sort of haphazard, and I will talk about that. But we standardized the assistance that we have been giving to these early childhood centers. $10 per child per month. And these are to the private institutions that the government would pay to each institution as a sort of support. Because this is a caring government. Oh yes, all the time. And Mr. President, some time back, it was brought to my attention that there was some disparity in the support being given to early childhood centers. You would know, Mr. President, that I got the Ministry of Education, December 20, when was it? 2017. December 2017. Okay. And you know, when you come to a new job or a new department, it's going to take you a little time to get acclimatized and to know everything that's going on. Okay? So you don't come in on day one and you have seen all of the finances or everything that's going on. It takes a little time, and as you meet and as you discuss and as you listen to the experts in the area, as you listen to the people who have been working there and who know what they're doing, and you get to pick up things. And so it came to my attention that the way that we had dealt with these early childhood centers before was a sort of haphazard way. You had some centers that were getting as little as $1,600 per year in support from the government, while others were getting as much as $4,000. That's 2.5 the amount. But what was more amazing to me is that when you look at some of these cases, a place could be getting $1,600 per year, and they have like 30 children. $1,600 per year. Yes. In support from the government. These are private places. You know, the parents would pay for the children to go there. So this is just a top-up. But you had other places that were getting 4,000, but they had less students. So you want to know, well, how they come up with that maths? And then you look around, and you look at the institution. Mr. President, you understand what I'm saying? You look around, and you look at the institution. And you see who are the people surrounding the institution, and then you understand the thing. And then you understand. So, Mr. President, you look, and you really look, and you understand the thing, but you don't say anything. You simply go back and you sit with the team, and you make a policy that is equitable across the board. And that is what we have done, Mr. President. So not only are we extending that other hand and providing the support, but we have corrected what was an anomaly, and we have made it fair across the board, Mr. President. So I will go back and I will say about information. When you get information and you can't verify the information, or you can't research the information, leave it where it is. And I will give some other friendly advice to you now, because I'm the one who deals with education on a daily basis. I like people. I am very approachable. Everybody have my number, 6629002. Message me and ask me, man, this thing, I hear this thing, is this thing true? And I will say, no, but see, this is how it goes. This is how it goes. And then there would be no need to come here before the Nevis public to put forward a falsehood.
Mr. President, for the record, I wish to clarify that there was no false information presented in this Honorable House, and so I seek your leave to quickly clarify something that the Honorable Member perhaps would have made, or perhaps is somewhat inferring. And so, in my presentation, Mr. President, I would have discussed or raised an issue as it relates to early childcare education and the assistance given to those persons. Mr. President, for the record, I wish to remind members of this Honorable House that I myself, I am a former educator, and I am also a mother, and I do have a two-year-old son who attends nursery. Now, Mr. President, from my experience as a parliamentarian, members of the public constituents who own and operate private childhood healthcare centers have come to me for assistance, and I have graciously given assistance from the bottom of my heart, and I wish to report and put on record that what was reported to me, particularly during the heightened period of the COVID-19 pandemic, persons were asked in the early childhood care systems, they were asked to have certain COVID-19 protocols in place, and the government did not give them any assistance in that regard. For example, if I am to be more specific, Mr. President, persons were asked to get temperature gauges to check, obviously, the temperature of children. That was a part of the COVID-19 protocol. They were also asked to have hand sanitizers and a number of measures. And so, having listened to their cries and their plight, and when I speak in the House, I speak from my personal experience. I assisted them graciously. I provided some of them with hand sanitizers and also with a number of amenities that were relevant at that particular time, Mr. President. And I dare say that it is quite upsetting for the honorable member to make any inferences of any false information being presented in this House. We are discussing a budget, and if an initiative is taking place, regardless of the extent, Mr. President, regardless of the extent of that initiative, the fact remains that sometimes the assistance given may not be sufficient, and sometimes, because we know we are operating with a very selective government, sometimes it does not reach everybody. And that is the simple point of clarification that I wish to make, Mr. President.
Thank you. But let me make an interjection here. What the member was saying is that having gotten into the system, the education system, he realized there were some irregularities, anomalies in terms of who was getting what. And he did not do it on his own. He went back to the people who are dealing with those things, and they were able to trash it out. Because, as he said, some people with a smaller population, school population, were getting more than those who had a higher number. And so therefore it was in his view, and the view of the authorities, that it was not right, and they sorted it out. The thing is that our people, and I'm saying it reservedly here, that once something is given, if two things are to be given and they could get four, they take four. And they're only concerned about themselves. Minister, member, government, you continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would want to think that the message is well received and that we would not see a similar thing in future. Mr. President, even though the point of order was not highlighted, I do understand where the member opposite is coming from, in the sense that that is her personal experience in dealing with people or in dealing with service providers. And of course, we are all grateful for the contributions that she would have made when approached by some of these service providers. I believe, well, I can speak about me, because on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, I am approached by persons, individuals, and institutions, and I try to contribute as best I can. And I would believe the same is true for all members on this side as well. The point that I had highlighted, and the point that I was making, was not one of the fact where we were giving a little and we could do some more as a government. You see, that when you come to the House and you speak, you need to be clear in what you're saying. Because what I heard was that we help, on the one hand, with the legislative structure and so on, but we do not extend the other hand. And that is what I was trying to respond to, or that is what I responded to. And it seems that the response was well taken. It seems the response had some fire to it. And I'm grateful for that, because the fact remains that it is important that when somebody comes to you with something, that you check it and you verify it, because you do not know what their motives are. It's not everybody who's genuine, Mr. President. But we move on from that point. And since we are on these points, let's all be friends. Let's all be friends. This is the holiday season, you know. Let's all be friends. Since we're on that, reference was made towards TVET, or Technical and Vocational Education. And as you know, Mr. President, because it has been said here in this House before, that the NIA, in conjunction with the federal government, that we have been undertaking the TVET project, a very large project. We are a part of the project. It is not our project alone here in Nevis. It's a federal project that we are a part of. And one of the deliverables from the project here in Nevis is a technical wing at the Gingerland Secondary School that is already under construction. We have a local contractor here. They won the bid, and they have the building under construction. And I must say, Mr. President, that the construction is going well. And I heard some reference being made to that project and to that particular building. But that is only one of the deliverables. And I will say, Mr. President, that there is supposed to be a redoing of the technical wing at the Charlestown Secondary School. That one has not commenced as yet in terms of the physical work. But the project is well on the way. The plans and so on have been drawn, and all of the consultants and so on have already been put on the project. We had to rework some of the plans to, Mr. President, you know, I'm a technical person by training, an engineer by training. And so we wanted to see some changes made to the building to make it more functionable. We want what you would call a future-proof building, so that in 15 years it is not obsolete, or in 20 years, or even in 50 years, it is not obsolete. It is something that can grow with the times and can expand when needed. So that project is taking a little bit more time to get started. It's going to be much bigger than the one at Gingerland Secondary School. And rightfully so. Charleston Secondary School is a very large school. So we heard some reference to perhaps doing a technical center separate and apart from the high schools. And I would not say that it is a bad idea. But what I would say is that the experts would have sat together some time back, before I became the minister with responsibility for education. The experts would have sat, they would have come together, and they would have made the decision that this is the route that they wanted to take. And the minister responsible at the time, both here and in St. Kitts federally, would have agreed. And so the project would have gone down a certain road. It is not for me, Mr. President, when the project is already 60 meters down the 100-meter track, to come in and say, hold up, we're doing another project. That is not how this works, Mr. President. We are dealing with the CDB. The CDB works a certain way. It is not for me to come in and say, hold up, stop, 60 meters down the track, and say, turn back, come back to the starting line, bring all the money and come back. We're going in the next direction, Mr. President. You and I know, and anybody who has been around government in the region knows that it does not work like that. So while that might be a different perspective or a different train of thought, it does not mean that the path that we are on is any less desirable or any less good, Mr. President, because based on what is being planned, it's going to be good for our students here in Nevis. It also, Mr. President, leverages the situation that we have now. Because look at it this way. Were we to say we're going to go the route of the technical wing, or at the standalone technical wing, we have to find the money to build it. We have to find the money to staff it. We have to find the students to then go there, Mr. President. That means that these students will not be in our normal high school path. So that's additional expenditure on a small economy. We are a small island. There are some things that are practicable in a bigger place with a bigger population, but might not work for a small place with a small population, Mr. President. It's not everything that you see over on the other side is good for your side, Mr. President. So while something might work in a bigger place, don't necessarily mean it would work here. If we had a population of 300,000, maybe. So, Mr. President, sometimes, before you speak about a certain situation, do a little research. Understand it. I came in and I researched the project. And I tried to understand the project. And the few places where I thought we could make certain minute changes, we did that. But to come and make wholesale changes to the entire project, maybe that was not possible. The Premier and Minister of Finance could tell you, I wanted to make some other changes too. Right? You would recall, there were some other changes that I wanted to make. But because of the nature of the project, we had to let it go the way it is going. And when these two buildings are finished, and when all of the classes start happening there, it's going to be beneficial for the people of Nevis. Students are going to be getting what you call a CVQ qualification or the NVQ qualification. So you come into high school, and if it is that you are not a student who's academically inclined, you don't love the maths, you don't love the English and the history, you want to do makeup, cosmetology, there's an opportunity for you. You're going to come out of school and you're going to have your CVQ or your NVQ dependent on the level of work that you did. You're going to have that certificate. So you could walk into a nice beauty parlor and you can have your certificate to say you're competent. And not just the certificate to say it. You are going to be competent because these are going to be practical classes. You can walk out of school with your CVQ or your NVQ as an electrician and walk onto a job, and you're not going to be a laborer or maybe not even an apprentice, depending on your level. You might be a competent electrician or plumber or mason, and that is what is going to come out of this. So this is addressing something that people have been talking about for a long time. Oh, we want people coming out of school with more practical skill and more practical knowledge. Well, this is the project to do it. The TVET is the project to do it. And we are a long way down the road, Mr. President. We have seen the construction started at the Gingerland Secondary School, and shortly, hopefully, in this calendar year, 2020, we will see the commencement at the Charlestown Secondary School. How time flies, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me talk a bit about exams because I realize that my time is going. The CXC exams, CSEC and the CAPE exams and the CCSLC exams. We all know what happened this year, COVID. Exams were already scheduled. Children were getting ready. Everything had to change. So the exams were put back until July and August. The CSEC exams were held from July 13th to August 4th. CAPE from July 13th to August 31st. And CCSLC from August 5th to 7th. We got the preliminary results, Mr. President. And for anybody who's been following what's been going on in education, we would know that there were some protests and so on throughout the Caribbean, where some students were saying, these are not my grades and so on. So CXC has not yet finalized their grades. But we've had the benefit of the preliminary results. There are some results that have been queried from here in Nevis. There are some results that have been queried from other places. And I read recently in the news that some students, I think it's in Jamaica, who would have been given initially failing grades, that their queries went off and they had come back with passing grades. So the situation is still one that is in flux. But nonetheless, based on the results that we got back, we are very happy with the performance of our students in spite of the COVID virus. Our students did well in all of the high schools, Gingerland Secondary, Charlestown Secondary, and in the Nevis International Secondary. And we had the graduations for the Charlestown Secondary School yesterday, not the normal graduation. In the morning, we had Charlestown Secondary School, and in the afternoon, we had the Nevis Sixth Form College. And for the first time, we had the graduation ceremonies separated. And I believe this is a harbinger of things to come, Mr. President. And we are hopeful that we will indeed be able to achieve that separation of the Sixth Form College from the high school. We are not there yet. And COVID has done a bit to slow down the process. But yesterday we had the graduations because of the situation, because of social distancing. But it might be a good thing. It might be where we head in the future. Tomorrow, Mr. President, we're going to have the graduation ceremony for the Gingerland Secondary School. I believe it's in the morning at 9. And it's going to be at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. And that's going to be there for the first time. I want to say kudos to the Minister of Culture for that. We're going to be using one of their facilities. You see, that's what government is about. That's what it's all about. I want to say congratulations to all of those students who did really, really well. At the Charlestown Secondary School, we had Miss Donella Thompson, who was the valedictorian. At the Gingerland Secondary School, we have Miss Brianna Brown, who is the valedictorian. And at the Nevis Sixth Form College, we had Miss Ursha Stapleton. All females. The females are doing really, really well. I'm going to take a moment to encourage our young fellas. Young fellas, you got to pick it up. And I also want to tell the girls to do better. Make the young fellas work if they want to get any valedictorian. Mr. President, we were able to pilot, in spite of the fact that we had COVID, we were able to pilot for the first time teaching practice sessions for our teachers who are enrolled at CFBC in the teachers training program there at CFBC. It might sound like a small thing, but this is something that we have been trying to do for years. And I want to say kudos to the PEO. She has worked really, really, really hard on this. Mr. President, what this is when our students go over, when our teachers, let me put it this way, go over to CFBC to get their training, the teachers' training. When they're in their last few months, when they are on their last few months, they have to do in-class teaching practice. And this has always been done over on St. Kitts. So, you know, our teachers, they have to go over and make it to whatever school they're assigned to do this teaching practice. Well, we have negotiated with CFBC. We have spoken with them and we were able to get to the position where we are now doing that in Nevis for our Nevisian teachers. Making it a lot easier for us Nevisians, Mr. President. And I want to say kudos to the PEO for that. She has really, really, really championed that. Mr. President, our school meals program, we continue to make a lot of adjustments to that. We have Mrs. Daniel, who has come on board, and she has been doing a wonderful job. To date, Mr. President, we offer school meals to more than 800, close to 900 students are on the school meals program, and the students are given a balanced lunch for $5 per day. Can't get any better than that. $5 per day, Mr. President. I will tell you all something. Whenever I go to visit the primary schools, one of the highlights of my visit is that the kitchen, they always call me. And they always say, Minister, come have some lunch. Okay? And I'm telling you, the food is good. The food is tops. I'm not going to tell you which kitchen I prefer, but I will tell you that it's good in every single school. Mrs. Daniel. And just recently, we have been able to partner with the Republic of China, Taiwan, and we have gotten a nutritionist from them to come on board to assist us to even further enhance our school meals program. So, Mr. President, we continue to work and we continue to move forward in spite of COVID. So, President, another thing that we have been doing in our schools and education has taken up all my time. I haven't even had the opportunity to talk much about IT and so on. But I'm going to mix IT in with education now. Because one of the big things that we are doing in our schools is that we are introducing workable broadband in our schools. Mr. President, if I could get an additional 30 minutes, I would be grateful. Just 30 minutes to wrap up.
The question is, the member has asked for an additional 30 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
And you know, Mr. President, when I came, you know, I thought I will speak for 45 minutes because we don't expect the budget to be contentious, you know? So I figured I would speak for 45 minutes, and look at where we are now.
90 minutes.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
So
Go right ahead.
I won't go too much further, though. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to bring workable broadband. We have internet in most of our schools. The 2 high schools, we have internet. All of the primary schools and so on, we have internet. We've been able to get some free internet from, I think, both service providers and Nevis, if I'm correct. Both Digicel and Flow, in different cases, have come on board and offered us internet at either a reduced rate or free in some schools, depending on schools that they might adapt. But for where we are going in 2021, we know that we have to introduce real broadband internet so that the students at Charlestown Secondary School, when 600 students decide that they want to get online to do their work, that we have the necessary bandwidth. So early in the year, the government entered into a relationship with both Flow and Digicel to upgrade the NIA's bandwidth and to upgrade bandwidth for our schools. So Mr. President, we initially had a situation where we had some 75 megabytes per second internet coming in from Flow, and a similar amount coming in from Digicel. Through some good negotiating skills, we were able to double the bandwidth with each company. So that's 75 and 75 with Flow, it's 150. And the same thing with Digicel, Mr. President. And we didn't need to double the amount of money that we paid. In one case, Mr. President, we didn't pay much more, maybe about 10% more. And in another case, we probably paid on the order of about 20% more to balance out the amounts. So the contracts are equitable. But the result has been that the bandwidth for the government is now double what it was before. So we now have the capability, Mr. President, to go to our schools and to increase the amount of bandwidth they have there so that the students can now have usable internet, so that our teachers in their classrooms can leverage the internet to assist with the teaching practice. Our students will now be capable to be in school when they don't have a class and be able to access the learning platforms such as Microsoft Teams from in school. And so I think this will go a really, really long way, Mr. President, to modernizing our schools here in Nevis. And so the Ministry of Education is working together with well, let me put it this way. The Department of Education is partnering with the information technology department and with some of our local service providers to get this project done. It's something, Mr. President, that, you know, it's going to be very, very good for us. So we started the work earlier in the year. The service providers, being Flow and Digicel, they had to bring the fiber to the schools. We have now brought the fiber to all of the schools, and it's just to deploy the units inside that will actually bring the internet to the schools. So we are hopeful that we will have all of this done within the first 2 months of the new year. So by the end of February, Mr. President, we expect that all of our primary schools and our high schools on Nevis will have usable broadband internet. And not the normal broadband that we have in our homes, the commercial style broadbands. And such is the investment of this government in our people, Mr. President. It's a government that puts people first. And this is a ministry of education that puts our children first. We were able to give some computers to the teachers, right? Yes. I know I wanted to talk about that as part of the technology too. As part of the TVET project, see, it's good to have my experts here so that I can ask them questions. Because I know just recently we got a shipment of computers. I think this was part of the COVID response. Yes, I'm correct now. As part of our COVID response, we were able to give some laptop computers to our teachers because they have to be using Microsoft Teams. And it's not all of the teachers who have access to devices. Some of them had devices, but the devices were dated and so on. So as part of the COVID response, we provided them with laptops. So now they're going to be able to leverage this along with the introduction of usable broadband to enhance the delivery of teaching to our students. And so I want to congratulate the hard-working team at the ministry for coming up with all of these really, really good ideas. I want to talk a little bit about the CCTV, since IT is a part of that also. Mr. President, you would know that we have deployed CCTV in the Charlestown area. But a part of the project, the CCTV project, is to deploy CCTV island-wide. And to get that done, one of the first things we have to do is to take the fiber optic cables around the island. So pretty much that project is now underway. We have partnered with a local service provider to assist with the placing of the wires on the poles. And I think the section that we are doing is from the Charlestown area over to, I think, Zion, New River? What's that? To Fothergills. Okay. But Mr. President, while this is good for CCTV, it's also going to assist us with the what we call the NIA network as a whole, because it will expand the NIA network to ring the whole island of Nevis. And once we would have been successful with ringing the whole island of Nevis with the NIA network, and you combine that with the now doubled broadband that we have, the NIA would be in a really, really good position to do something that not many other places could do. I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but I will give you a little snippet of it. One of the things that we want to do is to bring sort of free Wi-Fi to the Charlestown area. I think there was something in place already with the Ministry of tourism or with the tourism authority. But based on the limitations that we had at the time with broadband, it was not as usable as we wanted it to be. But Mr. President, in 2020, we are going to deploy something in Charlestown where you can come into Charlestown and you'll be able to access the internet for a limited period of time. But the internet that you will get when you access will be just as good or better than the internet when you go home and you turn on your internet. 2021, Mr. President. Slip of the tongue, no fault of the mind, Mr. President. So that's where we are looking to go. And we are going to start in Charlestown in 2021, and then we will see where it goes from there. But it's looking like something that's going to be very, very nice here on the island of Nevis. Let's speak a little bit about the library. We were able to relocate the public library, the main public library in Charlestown, from the building that houses the courthouse above the court to building just behind the new Treasury building. We were able to lease or rent a 2-floor building, and we have relocated them there. From all of the reports that I have gotten and from going there myself, it's a big upgrade from where we were before, Mr. President. This year we weren't able to do the normal summer programs and so on because of COVID, but we are hopeful that next year we would be able to bounce back. We weren't able to get the renovation done to the Gingerland Public Library last year, but I'm hopeful, this year, sorry, but I'm hopeful that if things go better in 2021, that we would be in a position to do that. It is a top priority for us in the Ministry of Library Services, but you know the times that we live in. We are hopeful that we are going to be able to get that done. So, President, I'm winding down, and I know there's something here on the paper that I need to talk about before I... Okay. That's exactly what I have right here to talk about. That's what I have right here to talk about as my last thing, because I wanted to end on a high. Yeah, so that's why I'm looking. That's why I'm looking for this other thing before I get to that. You see, the Ministry of Education, we are having an event tomorrow, right? At NIPAC, and I'm looking for the information on it here. Let me go back to trusty technology. I might be able to navigate here faster. Okay. And it's called Education for the Future, Mr. President. And it's learning beyond the pandemic. And this is something that is going to be happening at NIPAC tomorrow at 5 p.m. There is going to be seating inside NIPAC for 110 persons, but you can follow online. It's going to be on Microsoft Teams for all of the parents and so on. It's going to be a forum that parents would be able to interact with the persons in the Ministry of Education to ask all of the pertinent questions about where we are going in education. And that forum is going to be tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. at the NIPAC. You're going to get live demonstrations of the platform Microsoft Office 365 and a host of other things. You'll be able to ask your questions and so on of the good folks in the Ministry of Education.
Normally, when you're saying something and you have it in writing or whatever, would you not leave it for us to...
I tried to find it on this, Mr. President.
Yeah, well, if you have If you have it on the device, leave the device.
That's the good one for the Christmas season, Mr. President. Mr. President, the last thing I'm going to talk about is we were able to partner with the Republic of China and Taiwan to secure the services of a volunteer, a Miss Chen Chi, who has recently joined us here on Nevis. And her role is to pilot a program to teach Mandarin to our young students. She has been introducing Mandarin to students in the first form and second form at the Charlestown Secondary School, the Gingerland Secondary School, and at the Nevis International Secondary School. And this is a source of some pride for me, Mr. President. And I want to say thanks to the Republic of China, Taiwan. I want to thank the good folks in the ministry who worked hard on this, and I want to say a special thanks to the Premier and the Chief Diplomat and the Minister of Foreign Affairs federally for delivering this. And so our students now in Nevis are fast on track to being exposed to Mandarin. Mandarin is the Chinese language, Mr. President. And we all know how important China is in the world. The population is now several billion. And so if you can speak Mandarin and you can speak English, then you can speak to a large populace of the world. We all know that we have been able to partner with Taiwan for many, many years to have some of our students study at their universities. And part of that studying is that they would spend a year learning the language. But Mr. President, with our students being exposed to the language now at an early stage, they might not need that step when they go into university. They could just transition quite easily. Mr. President, all of the schools where the young lady is now teaching, they're very, very happy. We have teachers who want to sit into the class because they want to learn the Mandarin also. And it is a program that we are going to seek to expand going forward. But everything starts with a small step. And this is a small step, Mr. President, that we are very proud of and we are very grateful for. So again, I want to say thanks to the good folks in Taiwan, thanks to the ambassador, thanks to my team at Education for the hard work that they put in, and kudos and thanks to the Premier and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. In conclusion now, Mr. President, all things being said, I think we can look forward to a very productive year in 2021 in the Ministry of Library Services, Information Technology, and Education, Library Services, and Information Technology. Mr. President, I want to say my thanks to the Permanent Secretary, to the PEO, to the Director of the Libraries, to the Director of Information Technology, to all our staff in the Ministry of Education, to all of our principals, all of our teachers, all of our personnel working in the schools, to all of our staff at the various libraries, to all of our staff in the Department of Information Technology. I want to say my heartfelt thank you to all of you for the work that you have been putting in. And I want to wish everybody the best for the holiday season, for the Christmas season, and a productive and prosperous 2021. Mr. President, I want to leave us with the words of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. I want to wish this bill, Mr. President, safe passage through this honorable house, and I want to wish you, the clerk, member opposite, all the members on this side, the sergeant at arms, and everybody here, a very wonderful and pleasant Christmas and a bright and prosperous 2021. May it please you.
Hold your fire.
Mr. President, I rise with your leave to give my wholehearted support to the bill that has been presented in this honorable House yesterday, the bill shortly entitled the Nevis Appropriation 2021 Ordinance 2020. And Mr. President, as I rise to give my support to the bill, I would at the same time like to commend very highly the mover of this bill. And of course, he would have presented a budget that I would call one that is fit for purpose, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to join with the others before me in commending the mover of the bill and commending the Premier and the Minister of Finance for navigating us through some very turbulent waters over the past couple of months since the ending of March. I don't know where he would have gotten his sea captain license from, but he has done a marvelous job, Mr. President. And as I commend him, I also want to publicly commend, which I've done before, but I would like to do again, I would like to commend the members of the COVID-19 task force in Nevis. They also have done a marvelous and fantastic job in keeping us safe and in giving us all of the recommendations, what we should do from what we shouldn't do. And I think we have done well. Based on our size, Mr. President, I think we have done well compared to a lot of the larger islands and the countries around the world. If we see what is happening in the United States right now, that should be a leader. And what is happening in St. Kitts and Nevis, I think we deserve a lot of credit. And talking specifically for Nevis, commendation once again to the Premier and the Minister of Finance and the members of the Nevis Task Force. Mr. President, as I commend the mover of the bill and the budget, which is entitled Rebuilding Our Economy, a People-Centered Approach to Economic Recovery. I think the caption of this budget is very timely. And I want at this time, Mr. President, with your leave, to just give an account of my stewardship. I like these forums in budget where I can talk to the people of Nevis, of the Federation, of the wider region, and in the diaspora in terms of what we have done in our ministry, the accomplishments we have made, the steps we have made in our ministry. And of course, Mr. President, you've heard over and over again that COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, has affected so many things, and it has affected every facet of society, and it has affected all of the activities of my ministry and my departments. However, Mr. President, I can say boldly that irrespective of the fact that we have been affected by this pandemic for the past months, I have a lot to speak about. Mr. President, I'm going to speak first in the area of youth and the work of the youth department. And I can report on several areas of work that the youth department has been focused on. Let me talk first about the forums that they have been involved in over the past months. Because, Mr. President, what we have learned over the past months of this pandemic is that whatever happens, we can be relevant. And whatever happens, we can tailor our activities for those departments to suit what is happening. And that is exactly what this budget has done. That is exactly what this budget has done. It is tailoring what we are doing to suit the times, the pandemic that we are living in. And so in the area of youth, in terms of forums, the Department of Youth would have been involved in a federal cabinet youth forum, and that would have taken place in February of this year. And it is a St. Kitts Nevis forum. But I'm pleased to report that 42 young people from Nevis would have taken part in that federal youth forum, and they would have had the opportunity to interact with members of the federal parliament. Now, I'm also pleased to announce as well and to report that the director of youth and 2 members of her staff were invited by the Virchilds High School on St. Kitts, and they were invited to make a presentation and to dialogue with the students there, over 70 students, on fostering a good attitude. Now, of course, we know our young people are challenged nowadays, including our children, and they want all of the encouragement that they possibly could get. And so I'm happy that members of my staff from the youth department were able to go to the Virchilds High School in St. Kitts and dialogue with our young people. I know the member for Nevis 1 would be happy to hear this as well, that apart from doing things here on the island of Nevis and in the Federation, we also do things that could reach the diaspora. And earlier this year, we would have had PAHO and the WHO, they would have organized a young people dialogue. And of course, you know, nowadays, everything is on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and virtual. Everything is virtual. So even though we have our young people here on Nevis, they were able to connect with people around the world, around the globe, and they were able to be part of this dialogue that was organized by PAHO and WHO. And I'm very proud that 2 of our youngsters from Little Nevis were able to be a part of that dialogue in the persons of Chevonet Brand. That's why I believe he'll be happy when he hears that. And Tijon Wade, they were able to be a part of that youth dialogue. And Chevonet would have focused on mask making, and she actually donated some masks to workers at a supermarket. And Tijon would have started a backyard garden, and he would have assisted an elderly in livestock farming. And so I want to commend those 2 young persons. And it's always good when we can see our young people on Nevis shining. And at least the light that they're shining is not only shining in Nevis, but it's also shining so that others overseas can see as well. Mr. President, my Department of Youth has been involved for the past 2 years in what we call Poetry Night. For International Poetry Day, we have a function that we call Poetry Night, where we invite our young people, our young poets. We have a lot of talent on the island of Nevis, and so we invite our young poets to come and recite their poems on Poetry Night. And this is the 2nd year running, and so far it has been a huge success. And I want to commend the youth department, and of course all the poets that would have taken part in Poetry Night. The youth department as well, Mr. President, would have been involved in Bullying Awareness Day. We know that we hear a lot about bullying nowadays, and it's happening a lot in the schools, both at the primary level and the secondary level, and so my department has been involved in that as well. Additionally, they were involved in something called Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Awareness Week. And that speaks for itself, because we know over the years we've had problems with teenage pregnancy. And so the youth department is doing its bit through the work that is being done by PAHO, the WHO, and the UNFPA in bringing that message to young girls in particular, that teenage pregnancy is something that you should try to stay away from. Because of course when you get pregnant when you're a teenager, there are so many issues and so many problems that you could encounter. And so the Department of Youth would have been involved in that as well. And we had young persons, young teenage mothers who were able to go on the platform on social media and were able to speak to her experience and to speak to other persons. Now, apart from the forums that the Youth Department has been involved in, Mr. President, they have been involved in initiatives to give back. And so, of course, we know because of the pandemic, a lot of persons on the island had things very difficult. And so when it was time to go back to school, a lot of the parents had things difficult. And the Youth Department would have partnered with the Department of Education. They would have partnered with the Impact Globe organization that's based in St. Kitts to provide 15 back-to-school packages. But the Youth Department did not stay there. Impact Globe organization decided to do 15. But the Youth Department decided to reach out. They decided to put their hands in their own pockets. So they decided to assist. And in the end, they were able to distribute 30 packages for persons across the 5 parishes on Nevis, for children who are going back to school. Now, Mr. President, I'm also pleased to say that the Youth Department is also involved in something called Christmas Extravaganza. And what they're trying to do is to try to bring out the talents of our young people through various Christmas themes. And the Youth Department and the members of that department are so talented, Mr. President, that as a part of this Christmas Extravaganza, they were able to actually produce a song, a Christmas song. And it is on YouTube, it's on social media. That song was composed by one of the members of staff at the department, the Youth Officer Leandra Dyer. It was produced by Swain Evelyn, who works in one of my departments. And it was performed by members of staff of the Youth Department. And so I give credit to the Youth Department for that initiative. And it sounds good too. It sounds good too. Right? So those of you who are listening or viewing and you haven't heard the song by the Youth Department yet, you need to check it out. You can check me and I can send it to you. It's on social media, and as I said, you can get it. So please, make sure you go on and you like the song by the Youth Department. Well done, Department of Youth. It's on my Facebook page as well. So it's all over. All right, Mr. President, the Youth Department over the years has been involved in something called the Summer Job Attachment Program. And that Summer Job Attachment Program is part of the what we call the KEYS program, which is Keep Empowering Youth with Skills. And so every year what we try to do from the Youth Department is to empower our young people. Because every year we know we have a lot of persons leaving school, both at the 5th form and the 6th form level and other levels. And so they need to be empowered with certain skills for when they enter the workplace. And so we normally have a couple weeks training where we have sometimes up to 50 or more students, and they gather somewhere and we do some training with them. We bring different facilitators in. This year, because of the COVID, we had to do things differently, but we still did it. And so even though we were not able to have those in-class sessions, those face-to-face sessions that we normally have, we were able to do things virtually. And so we were able to do things virtually in terms of having like mock interview sessions and teaching work ethics and so on to the school leavers. And so even though we were not able to take it to a classroom setting, we were able to get that done anyway. Now, Mr. President, it is always good when our young people excel. And our young people on this tiny island of Nevis have been excelling in a lot of different areas. And it is good when they excel that you recognize them as well. And so this Department of Youth, my department, have been recognizing our young people over the years in terms of when they excel, when they do good things. Because when our young people do bad things, we hear a lot. And so when they do good things, that needs to be amplified as well. And my ministry has been doing exactly that. Now, the Department of Youth would have introduced something this year called the Youth Impact 12. And what that seeks to do is to recognize young people in different fields, different aspects of national nation building. And we were able on International Youth Day on the 12th of August 2020 to recognize 6 young people. And I'm going to name the young persons who were recognized and the areas in which they were recognized in. Verna Grant in Education and Lifelong Learning, Ravina Prasad in Youth in Agriculture, Delcia Burke, Volunteerism, Melissa Clark, Sports Excellence, Brandon Powell, Information Technology, and Cecilia Stanley in Entrepreneurship. Mr. President, I can tell you that those young people were beaming on the evening when they would have received their awards at NEPAC. I want to congratulate them once again. I want to congratulate the Department of Youth for the initiative. And we must continue to shine the spotlight on our young people when they do good things. Mr. President, the Youth in Excellence doesn't stay there. Very recently, we would have journeyed to St. Kitts for a special sitting of the National Assembly. And at that special sitting of the National Assembly, we were able to recognize the 25 most remarkable teens of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I think this is the 10th installment of that initiative. I think it is a marvelous initiative by the federal government. I'm happy to be a part of the federal government now, and I had the privilege and the pleasure of presenting my first awards. And of the 25 most remarkable teens, I just want to highlight the 8 from Nevis who were a part of that tranche of 25 for 2020. And the 8 from Nevis and the areas in which they were awarded were Gregory McGrath, Coping Positively with Challenges, Rodina Da Costa, Spirit of Hope, Nikesha Henry, Environmentalism, Cheyenne Tyson, Most Promising, Elise Thomas, Youth Activism, Vanessa Simon, Courage to Overcome, Teron Webb, Music, and Kejari Huggins, Spirit of Hope. I really want to congratulate these 8 teens, and of course congratulate all 25 most remarkable teens. But I specifically want to congratulate those on Nevis, and not only them, but I want to really congratulate their parents, their relatives, their friends, because it was a signature moment for these 8 teens and the 25 most remarkable teens. And I want the teens out there in St. Kitts and Nevis to continue to do good. Because where these teens were recently on that stage, you can be there next year. You can be there in the next 2 years. And as I said, it is good when we can shine the light on our young people when they excel. Mr. President, in terms of our plans for 2021, of course, everything that we do will depend on what happens in St. Kitts and Nevis and globally with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we still have to plan. And so for 2021, we will continue from the Department of Youth to continue to work with our youth groups. Our youth groups need a lot of help. There are not a lot of them out there, but those that are there needs help with capacity building. And so the department will continue to work with the youth groups in terms of capacity building. We are going to try to revitalize or resuscitate, whatever you want to call it, the Nevis Youth Council. I remember the days, Alexis would remember, when the Nevis Youth Council was very vibrant. I actually was a member. I was an executive member of the Nevis Youth Council when I was younger, because I am still young, right? So I was a part of the executive of the Nevis Youth Council, and so we would hope that that will come back, and the Department of Youth will try, with the assistance of regional partners, to bring the Nevis Youth Council back. And of course, we'll continue to focus on our excellence. We'll continue with our Youth Impact Program. We'll continue to coordinate and collaborate with the Department of Youth in St. Kitts to ensure that we have persons from Nevis who are part of the 25 most remarkable teens. And of course, the Summer Job Attachment Program, we are hopeful that COVID will be kinder to us next year and we can get back to the regular sessions of the Summer Job Attachment Program. And we will also try as much as possible as well in the new year to try to get our young people involved in advocacy for the environment. And so we will want as much as possible to have our young people being taught about how to preserve our fragile environment. Mr. President, I turn to sports. And this is an area, irrespective of the fact that we had COVID, we have quite a lot to report again, Mr. President. And I'm going to start in an area that we don't normally hear much about in the budget. And it is an area of swimming. Of course, we know that during the year, a lot of the sporting activities had to be shelved, had to be sidelined. But irrespective of that, we still had a lot of accomplishments. And this is one of the areas that we have accomplished much in. This is one of the areas that we have taken some giant steps in the area of swimming. And in January of this year, we would have launched something called the Swim to Win Initiative. And the Swim to Win Initiative, Mr. President, is all about teaching people on Nevis to swim. And not only to swim, but to swim properly. Because there's an art, there's a technique. So it's not just about swimming. It's about learning to swim and learning to swim well. And and so, Mr. President, we would have launched this initiative. And of course, when we were here for this special sitting to commemorate the Christina disaster, the Premier and the Minister of Finance also mentioned it. And he mentioned the support of the administration for the initiative as well, and more things in terms of teaching people to swim. And so this initiative would have been going very well. We had the support through the instrumentality of my ministry. We were able to bring someone down from the US. She was able to come free of charge to do these sessions, to teach some facilitators or some instructors who have now been teaching the persons on Nevis to swim. And so we would have had the expertise of a lady called Miss Anne McClendon, who's an accomplished swimmer. And so she would have come, she would have taught the instructors. She was due to come back. Unfortunately, COVID came along. And because of her visit here, we now have 23 instructors who are part of the program. 23 instructors. And I must give kudos to the collaborating partners, because one of the main partners of this Swim to Win initiative is the Department of Sports. And the collaborating partners are the Four Seasons Homeowners Foundation, the St. Kitts Nevis Swimming Federation, the Red Cross, Special Olympics Nevis, and the Sail to a Brighter Future organization. And so these partners have come together, and we are now doing something that so many persons are benefiting from. It's something very welcome for the island of Nevis. We are surrounded by water. And of course, we know we have to be on the water practically on a daily basis for some people. And it is always good when you learn how to swim, just in case. We are hoping that nothing happens. But we know what happened 50 years ago as well. And so we must be mindful of these things. And so this program, Mr. President, is geared towards taking the fear away from people, because a lot of us are very fearful of the water, justifiably so. And so we are trying to take away the fear from people and trying to teach people how to swim and to swim properly. Now, Mr. President, I really want to commend the instructors. And apart from the instructors, we also have volunteers, because the program is run on Sundays at Wali. And of course, we know some of who we are dealing with are young children as well. And we must be very mindful and be very careful when parents send their children there to the classes. And so apart from the instructors, we have a number of volunteers who assist in the program as well. And I really want to tip my hat to all of the instructors and the volunteers for coming on board and doing this for free, giving up their Sunday afternoons when they could have been home resting and coming to teach our young, our not so young, and our sometimes older ones to swim as well, because the program is open to everybody of every age. And so what we have realized is not only young persons who have come on board, but older persons have come on board learning to swim as well. And this past Sunday, we had an award ceremony at Uwali Beach. And I am pleased to say that this initiative would have touched a lot of persons. I think it would have touched probably over 100, the persons who are learning to swim as well as the instructors and so on. And when I saw the spirit and the enthusiasm of the persons who are a part of this initiative, my heart was full. And I really want to commend all of the partners once again. And I want to especially commend a lady by the name of Terry Andrews, because she's someone who is pushing and pushing and pushing. Not that I'm singling her out, but she has done yeoman service to this program. She and a lot of the other persons. But I wanted to single out Terry and the work that she's doing with this program. Now, in the area of swimming as well, Mr. President, because we're talking about sports, and swimming is a sport. And I believe that sometime in the future, that we are going to be able to have regional and international, we're going to have swimmers who will be able to compete regionally and internationally. And with that in mind, earlier this year, we had the commissioning of a 25-meter in-water pool at Wali. And people may ask, well, what is it with this pool, the in-water pool? As I mentioned a while ago, some people are fearful and that sort of thing. And so the essence of this is to have an enclosed area, 25 meters long, where you can teach people the art of swimming even more than just being in the wide open ocean. And this 25-meter pool, it was sponsored by the International Swimming Federation of World Swimming Body, FINA. And I have to commend Mr. Winston Crook, who is the president of the St. Kitts Nevis Swim Federation, for the initiative. And we are going further, because I've also heard from Mr. Crook that another one is on the way to Nevis. So we've commissioned one, and another one is on the way to Nevis. And as we talk about swimming as well, and we talk about competition, I want to commend young Robert Liddy, because earlier this year, he would have participated in a Swim Miami contest. Let me make sure I have it right. Yes, Swim Miami 2020 competition. He would have done his swim here on the island of Nevis. And so he would have competed from here with persons from Miami and other parts of the world. And he placed first in the Special Olympic category. First, from Little Nevis in the Special Olympic category, and he placed 14th overall. And of course, his participation was made possible, facilitated through the hard work of Terry Andrews again and coach Winston Crook. So we are making waves in swimming. Mr. President, let me turn now quickly to football. And here again, football, a lot of the games were aborted this year, but good things still happened in 2020. I want to congratulate the Nevis Football Association, because they are now full-fledged members of the SKNFA, the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association. And they would have started their 2019-2020 league. It had to be aborted or stopped, and then it was restarted. So they were still able to compete it a couple of months ago. And I want to congratulate the youths of Future. They would have played in the finals against the All Ballers, and they would have won. And the premier and the member for Nevis 2 will be very proud when I say this as well, that the Bath United football team would have journeyed over to St. Kitts and they would have won the Division 1 tournament. Yeah, good things are happening under this administration. When good things happen, we have to blow our trumpet. And because of the fact that they won the Division 1, because you know, in football, the folks in St. Kitts are normally better than us. But this time around, the Bath United team would have done a marvelous job and they were able to win that tournament. And because of that, they will now be going to the Premier League next year. In the area of basketball, Mr. President, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, a lot didn't happen. And of course, we know that every time I come here to this podium and we talk about sports, I normally commend basketball because that's an association that does quite a lot on their own. Of course, they would normally get some help from us, but they normally are very proactive. And unfortunately, they had to shelve a lot of their activities this year. However, they were able to send a youth team over to St. Kitts to take part in a tournament there early this year, and that youth team placed second. And that's not all, Mr. President. One of the members of that team that placed second, in the person of Stevenson Providence, caught the eyes of some scouts there. And he was able to get a scholarship to go to Florida to college. Should have left earlier this year. Unfortunately, COVID stepped in and we had to postpone. So I believe he will be traveling next year, hopefully. We hear a lot of things about the vaccine and so on. So let's hope next year is going to be kinder to us. And so I want to congratulate young Stevenson Providence for doing so well in the tournament. And I am extra proud because he normally represents a team that my department and my ministry sponsors, the Youth and Sports Eagles. So that's an even prouder moment for me. The Basketball Association, they would have also organized a mini basketball tournament that had to be aborted. And a member of the association in the person of Jaquita Thomas, she's doing some online training. There are other members of the association who are doing online training, but she's doing a particular online training for female leaders of basketball. And that training is being led by the International Basketball Federation. And as I wrap up the area of basketball, this coming weekend, I'm sorry, not this weekend, the following weekend, on the 19th and the 20th, we'll be having a basketball tournament involving 5 teams, and that will be taking place at the Craddock Road Hard Court. I'm reminding persons when you go to these sporting events to kindly stick to the protocols. Now, Mr. President, netball. Netball is back. I'm gonna borrow the words from the member for Nevis one. It's back with a bang. And you know, Mr. President, I'm extra proud to say that netball is back under my watch, under this administration. Because netball has been struggling for many years on Nevis. And those of us who know about netball in previous years would know that there were some glory days for netball of Nevis, when netballers from this little tiny 36 square mile island would have played internationally. And for whatever reason, netball waned. Many attempts were made to bring it back. Many attempts were made to bring it back. And I'm delighted it's back now. And I think I can stand here and say that I believe it's back to stay. From what I'm seeing in this present tournament, Mr. President, I believe netball is back to stay. And I'm happy that it's back. Because, you know, our females need to have that outlet where they can go and play sports as well. Because, you know, every year I come and talk about cricket, I talk about football, I talk about basketball. Well, the ladies are involved in athletics, but they need another sport in which they can be involved as well. And so the Department of Sports on Nevis is partnering with the Nevis Netball Association. And by the way, The Nevis Netball Association is back because of an initiative by my Department of Sports. We would have brought several persons together last year at a forum on a Saturday morning. I could recall vividly. I was there. And we would have brought them together to discuss the idea of bringing netball back. And a lot of ideas were thrown around. And we had an interim committee that was put in place. And then eventually we had a netball association that came back. And because of the collaboration between the Nevis Netball Association and my department, we now have a very exciting netball tournament taking place in the heart of Brown Hill at the Brown Hill Hard Court. It started on the 20th. It started on the 7th of November, and it is due to conclude this coming Sunday, the 13th, at the Brown Hill Hard Court. There are 5 teams taking part: DSC Elite Ballers, DSC, and DSC stands for Dynamic Social Club Uprising Stars, Venomous Vixens, Blue Tides, and Hurricanes. And Mr. President, I was so proud when I got there on the 7th of November. And when I saw all these ladies of all ages, they're very excited, very enthusiastic to get on the court. The ladies look well-toned as well. And I mean, when I see the competition on the court, I was really blown away. Because we do have some good talent, and with nurturing these talents, I believe we can go places. And as I said, I was delighted to see persons who are not so young as well on the court. Madam Minister, I would like to see you on the court one of these days. I would like to see you on the court one of these days, right? But, I mean, I am so happy. And I would love to see the honorable member opposite as well on the court. So I would like to see both of you on the court one of these days. And it is a good way. Of course, we know nowadays we are all about getting fit and living healthy lives. And, you know, to see the ladies there running on the court, jumping, you know, it was a good feeling. And I was really pleased with the turnout that we had, the support that we had at the start, and the support that we've been getting at every game. Every game we have good crowd support. And so the people are there to support good netball. They're there to support the young ladies. And I know it's going to be very exciting come Sunday when it comes down to the finals. And so I am extra proud to say, when I step off the scene, I could say netball came back under me. When we sit in government, Mr. President, we have to leave a legacy. We have to say, when we can look back, we can say, well, that came under me. When Minister Liebert leaves, he can say, the Gingerland sect, the TVET came under me. Madam Minister can say, well, the nurses get their pay under me. She could boast about that. Remember for Nevis, one could say, well, the filtration system came under me, that's why we have more water. The Premier could say, well, look down there by Penny's, the Penny's Park. I'm going to stamp my name on that. And we're going to talk about the Newcastle Police Station. The member for Nevis, folk would say, I'm going to stamp my name on that. I don't stamp my name on the David Freeman Center of Excellence. And I'm stamping it on netball here too. So we need to leave a legacy. And that is why, Mr. President, we always say everything we do in this government is people-centered. And that is why I'm so happy that the young ladies now have an outlet that they can go and play sports as well. So netball is back to stay. Mr. President, we have several sporting facilities all around Nevis. And when I came to this honorable house for the first time, and I made my presentation, I did indicate that we will do our best to ensure that we enhance our facilities across the island. We have been doing that incrementally. We cannot do all one time, but we have been trying our best to do. And I can say boldly that for the short little time that I've been there in government, we have had enhancements and improvements to a lot of the sporting facilities across Nevis. This last year, we have had improvements to the courts, the hard courts at Jessup's, Cotton Ground, and Bath Village. We've had great improvement and enhancement at the St. George's Recreation Ground we call Ball Pasture. When we were down there for the sports days this year, everybody was talking about Ball Pasture and how good it was looking. And I can say as well, Mr. President, that we continue to do work at the Mondo track, because we want, in the very near future, that over there could be a first-class football ground. And I will say now, a lot of people did not know this, but we here in Nevis, we were in discussion to have a regional football tournament right here in Nevis at the Mondo track. Had it not been for COVID, it would have been taking place this year. The persons were already in discussion with the Four Seasons Resort for the teams to be hosted there. And so we are going places. And so we continue with the improvements over there in terms of making over there a wonderful football field. So when COVID is past and gone, we can renegotiate and have our regional and hopefully international football tournaments being played right there at our first-class facility at the Mondo track. Mr. President, in the area of sports, I must commend and congratulate 4 young persons who would have completed their 4-year college education, degree education in Jamaica at the G.C. Foster College. And I must give credit and kudos to the Honorable Madam Minister, under which they started. And they would have gone to the G.C. Foster College in Jamaica. I'm going to call in here, man, don't worry. And the 4 persons are 2 young ladies and 2 young men. Kerisha Powell, where's she from? Sienna Lida, Keswan Archibald, Alger Newton. So all of them from your constituency? What's that match fixing? Madam Minister, that look like match fixing, right? But I have to commend these 4 young people because they came back with a lot of vigor. What you call it, Alexis? Vim, vigor, and vitality? They came back with all of that. And they're ready to work for Nevis. And you know what, Mr. President? They were fully sponsored by the ministry, this ministry, which was ably led, and when it started by the Madam Minister. Madam Minister, thank you for that start. And of course, Mr. President, as we look forward to 2021, we will continue to work with the sporting organization, because sometimes some of our sporting organizations need help capacity-wise. And we have been doing that over the years. We're going to continue to do that. And so we will be doing that, we're going to continue to work with communities in terms of getting more sports out in the community. We're going to continue to work with the schools in terms of getting their sporting activities, netball, football, cricket, athletics, and so on. And of course, we're going to expand on the Swim to Win initiative. There are a lot of other things, but those are some of the main plans we have. Of course, next year, all being well, we're going to bring back the summer camp, and we will just continue to work to ensure that our young people excel in sports. Mr. President, in the area of community development, it is important that we continue to touch our communities. And we would have been involved, the Community Development Department would have been involved in a number of initiatives for this year. Because of the fact that COVID struck, we, in a lot of our departments, would have done a lot of training and capacity building for our staff. And so the Community Development Department that would have been involved in training the doing in-house training for our staff at the Community Development Department. And so we would have been involved in capacity development and capacity building workshops. And so you would have done, the department would have done a series of training programs. Mr. President, I am also pleased to report as well that under the purview of the Department of Community Development, we have also been going into the communities to establish steel pan groups. We would have gotten a grant sometime back, and I know that would have been spearheaded by former Premier, the Honorable Vance Emery. We would have gotten some pans, and we would have started in one area, and we wanted to go into the other communities eventually. We would have started in St. George, Gingerland, and the intention was to spread. And so, fortunately, we have someone attached to the Department of Community Development now, someone who teaches pan music, and Mr. Patterson, and he has been doing such a marvelous job. And so, we have been able to establish 4 youth groups and 2 adult steel pan groups. Included in one of those adult steel pan groups is yours truly. So me and all alone play pan. Imagine that in my younger days. Learning to play pan. Actually, I should have been making my debut in the heart of Charlestown today, but I had to be here. So hopefully later in this month, I'll be making my debut in public. And I really want to thank the department for the vision of, I play pan, I cook, I do everything. I'm doing everything. Alexis tell me I can only boil water. But I learned to do everything, Mr. President. Once it becomes available, I am there. Continuous education. The Department of Community Development as well, Mr. President, has been involved in a 5 workshop. Of course, we know that we have lost some of our accomplished 5 players over the years, and we don't want this to die. And we have a few persons who can still play 5, and we are trying to teach younger persons and other persons in the community, irrespective of your age, if you're interested. And so we would have been doing a 5 workshop at the David Freeman Center of Excellence as well, and I want to commend the department. Now, one of the highlights of the department this year was the hosting of the Barnes Got Breadfruit Festival and Competition. The department has been hosting this for a number of years, and they decided this year, apart from just the festival, let's do a little competition as well. And so they would have put in a competition there for the persons of Barnes Got. I went there and I sampled almost all of the dishes, and Mr. President, I really did not know that you can do breadfruit in so many styles. And it is important when we do these kind of things, because, Mr. President, breadfruit is something that is very plentiful on Nevis, and it goes to waste too much. And when you go to these kind of activities, and of course it was hosted in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism, thanks to the Ministry of Tourism for collaborating with us. And you can learn so much. And activities of this nature can actually encourage our younger generation to start eating breadfruit, because it's not just about boiling the breadfruit in a little bit of soup. It can be done in so many attractive ways. And so we had that festival. I was able to go. That was on the 31st of October. And kudos to that department. Some of the things that we want to do for next year, we want to do what is called a community audit, where we go to the community and, get information of the community in terms of what their needs are and so on. We want to do something in community tourism as well. I know something would have been done in the past. We want to rekindle that, where we can have community tourism. When the tourism sector bounce back, when tourists come to the island of Nevis, we want people to be able to go into the communities and get a feel of community life, rather than just staying at the Four Seasons or the Hermitage or the Golden Rock or the Mount Nevis, get out. And so we want to do something with community tourism as well next year. And of course, we'll continue to work with our community groups. They need some help with capacity building. We'll try to do that as well. And of course, we'll continue with our maintenance of our community centers. And we will try as well to reinstate, we had a program where we used to teach computer classes to the adults and seniors. We want to get back to that as well. Mr. President, I turn now to social services. And social services, Mr. President, would have done yeoman service for this very difficult and challenging year of 2020. Mr. President, social services is one of those essential services. And during the periods when we were locked down, the Department of Social Services was out there, were at work, sometimes 7 days a week, because we had to make sure that we were able to get certain things done. Mr. President, we know of the hardship that many persons were facing and are still facing because of the pandemic. And a lot of persons found solace at the Department of Social Services. Normally people find solace there, but with the onset of the pandemic, a lot more persons found solace at that department. And we were very accommodating, Mr. President. I tip my hat to the director and the staff there at Social Services. They did a marvelous, marvelous job. They were inundated with calls daily. Calls were even coming from St. Kitts for assistance. And we were able to get the calls, screen the calls, accommodate persons. Mr. President, over 1,100 persons have been assisted since the pandemic. And we were able to assist people with food vouchers. Unfortunately, domestic violence disputes, because we have a counseling unit, which I'll speak about as well. Our seniors, Mr. President, those who are housebound, those who are sick, some of our seniors, they need to have care from persons on a daily basis, sometimes more than once per day. And my department was able to work with the police department in ensuring that our providers of health, of primary care and relatives of seniors and housebound, that they were able to be out there and not being sent home by the security forces. Because, you know, once they had the lockdown, people could not have been found out there unless you have a letter or something. And so we were able to get those letters of permission from the police, and we were able to provide that with the persons who are providing assistance for our elderly and housebound. During the pandemic as well, Mr. President, you would have heard this from the Prime Minister, that additional persons were added to the Poverty Alleviation Program, PAP. And so my Department of Social Services was able to facilitate that. And so there were some persons who were able to get onto the PAP program for a couple months to alleviate the situation. And so we were able to facilitate that as well. And of course, there are persons who come to the social services for everything. So some persons who wanted help with filling out their social security forms, they came there as well. And of course, apart from doing the vouchers, we did some food packages as well. And I want to just go on record to say a hearty thank you to some persons or some organizations who would have partnered with us over these difficult months in getting assistance to where the assistance is needed. And I want to thank SL Hospice and Company Limited, the Seventh-day Adventist community, the Methodist community, Republic Bank, the Red Cross, and Mr. Kelly Jamaica Dixon. They assisted us. And Mr. President, let me just say as well that in terms of our food vouchers that we have distributed, as of the 2nd of September this year, 2 months ago, as of the 2nd of September, the approximate amount that we would have spent on food vouchers because of the pandemic, a little over $80,000. A caring government, people-centered approach. And so I want to commend once again social services. And as we speak of social services, Mr. President, I always boast, and I will continue to boast, as long as I'm the minister of this ministry, that our seniors on the island of Nevis, our seniors on the island of little 36 square mile Nevis, are the beneficiaries of the best treatment, the best programs that exist in the region. Far, by far. And the trend would have started by Madam Minister. Madam Minister, thank you as well. And so we continue with these programs, and every year we have a number of these initiatives bringing out our seniors. Our seniors are looking younger, they're looking more vibrant. And it's because of the treatment that they're getting from us, social services and the caregivers. Caregivers are there on a weekly basis to check upon them. When they can't go during the pandemic, they're called. And every year we have this little thing on Valentine's Day, the 14th of February. And Mr. President, you don't want to see how those seniors dress up in the white, red and white, could outdo any of us. And so we would have had that activity at the Jessup Community Center this year. And during that activity, Miss Glorita Vaughn would have retired. She would have done yeoman service in caregiving. She would have spent 13 years. She would have trained some of our young people. And I want to congratulate Miss Glorita Vaughn. And of course, normally in the month of October, that is what we normally call the month of the elderly, where we have a month of activities. And I always tell the folks at social services, you all overdue. Because I believe some of them, sometimes the seniors, they're tired. But they're tired, but they want to come because they're excited. They don't want to stay home. And so we have all these activities in the month of October. Unfortunately, we had to scale back this year, and we apologize for the seniors for scaling back, but we had to. Based on the protocols and based on the advice from health officials, we had to scale back. But nevertheless, we had a few activities. We had a church service. Normally, we have a church service for the entire island. This year, we decided we're going to do one for each parish. And then we would have had a day called the Seniors Day when they would have called into Vaughan. And the highlight this year, we normally have a gala when they come out in dressed up as well, in their dandan. Last year, we did it differently. We did it at Government House, called an afternoon on the lawns. You know? And this year, because of COVID, we had to scale back. But we decided we have to have a highlight of the month. And so the highlight of the month was a ceremony, a luncheon, on the 29th of October. And this time, what we did, we decided to award one senior from each parish. And so we awarded 5 seniors. And the seniors were Miss Bernadette Lewis from St. Paul, Constantia David from St. Thomas, Violet Perkins from St. James, Reuben Williams from St. George, and Carlton Pinney from St. John's. And during that ceremony, we also saluted and honored 2 caregivers in Mrs. Essie Lashley and Mrs. Janet Herbert. And I want to commend once again social services for the initiative, and the seniors were very, very pleased with the activity. Now, Mr. President, disaster preparedness and disaster readiness was high on the agenda for social services this year. Because social services, we know we look after everybody. I always say in my ministry, we look after people from the cradle to the grave. And of course, we know in social services as well, we look after people who are vulnerable. We look after the underprivileged. And so sometimes we have a lot of disasters, man-made and natural. And we have to look after our vulnerable population when it comes to disasters as well. And so the department would have partnered with UNICEF and would have done a training, disaster training, and it reached 35 children and parents, and at the end, the households were able to go home with full disaster preparedness kits. Now, last year, I would have also spoken about the RISE program, the Restore, Inspire, Secure, Empower program. That is a program geared towards our less fortunate single mothers as well. And this program, Mr. President, is a program that is designed to assist people, but not just a handout program. It's a hand-up program. Hand up. And so people can benefit from cash advancements, but you're not going to just benefit from it, you know. We are also teaching you things. So you also have to come to certain classes on parenting, on budgeting, and that sort of thing. So in order for you to benefit financially, you will also be benefiting holistically as well, because you'll be learning something. And so this program is continuing, and this, as a part of this program as well, we were able to touch families and teach them things about disaster preparedness again this year. Mr. President, one of the highlights from social services this year was the launch of the Yes to Success. I'm sure you'd have heard a lot about that. The YTS Center at Pinnies, and that is a flagship program and initiative of social services and my ministry and this administration. Flagship initiative, Mr. President. We've heard a lot about skills training, and this facility down at Pinnies, Mr. President, which was officially commissioned on the 27th of November, Mr. President. Do I have the dates wrong? 27th of October, I think. Mr. President, this initiative is geared towards mostly skills training. And it's a multifaceted facility. It's very well outfitted with equipment and so on. And we are mostly targeting at youth, at-risk young people. Because we know that at graduation, we hear a lot about the persons who pass 10 and 12 and 15 subjects. But there are persons who are not so academically inclined that should not be left behind, Mr. President. And so this facility is geared towards helping persons like those. And so we'll be doing skills training year-round at this facility. And that's not all, Mr. President. We are also partnering with education and with the justice system as well. We are partnering with the Juvenile Justice Reform Project, the JJRP, whereby when young persons get in trouble with the law, and the crimes are not so serious, rather than sending them over to St. Kitts, or putting them up in the cell in Charlestown, they can go to this facility. So this is what we call a diversion site. And this was sanctioned by the OECS. And I'm proud to say, Mr. President, it is the first of its kind in the Federation. First of its kind in the Federation. We're taking steps. We're moving up, Mr. President. And so, persons who go to the magistrate court, instead of the magistrate court sending them to St. Kitts, sending them to us in social services, we could do the reform there. We have people trained who can do the reform there. Apart from that, persons who may be suspended from the school system, because we all passed through high school, and sometimes people got suspended. And when you get suspended, you go home. And you go home, you don't have anything to do. And when you don't have anything to do, you get in trouble. So you leave the school system. You're suspended from school for doing something wrong or doing something bad. But you're going home, and you're home unsupervised, you may get yourself in even more trouble. And so, we're working in partnership with education. So when persons get suspended from school, they are suspended to this site. They are suspended to the site to learn a skill, to get lessons in anger management and that sort of thing. And so this is a site that is forward-looking and will benefit a lot of our young people. Mr. President, the site is a collaborative effort of USAID, the OECS, the Nevis Island Administration, the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation. And I want to go on record to thank USAID, OECS, NHLDC, and the Nevis Island Administration for the support that has been provided. Because, you know, Mr. President, when these funding organizations are doing these things, they come, you know, they come and they see what we are doing. And when they come, Mr. President, we normally get high marks. And we have gotten some very high marks for that facility. And I really want to commend, too much commendation is not good for her. Miss Maynard and her team at Social Services. She would have really worked hard to get this facility up and running. And we are proud of what we are doing there. And I would have said some time back at another forum that what we are doing in Little Nevis resonates overseas and in the diaspora. Because after this facility was launched, I got a message from somebody from Texas Southern University. I saw this thing on the internet, and I want to know more about it. And I want to know how my university would get involved. I've already put him in contact with Ms. Maynard. They would have already had a conversation. And hopefully next year, Texas Southern University will be partnering with us to have programs at that facility as well. So we're moving on. We're making strides, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's so much more I can say about the Yes to Success facility. But I still have a lot to discuss, and my time is running. So let me move on. Mr. President, just before I leave the Yes to Success, over 70 young people have already benefited from that facility. This is the 6th cycle, because even though the facility has just been officially commissioned, the work has been ongoing for some time. And so we are now in the 6th cycle of programming and training. And in this particular cycle, we are now focusing on pottery. We don't want the art of pottery to die. We are focusing on heavy equipment training for young men, and some persons were also involved in digital training as well. And so I want once again to commend all of the partners who have partnered with us for this initiative. And as we say in this ministry and in this administration, the word failure is not a part of our vocabulary. Yes to success. Everything we do in this administration is a success story. And this Yes to Success initiative is a huge success story for my ministry. I also want to say, Mr. President, and you would have heard from Madam Minister earlier, that unfortunately, we have been getting some issues with mental illness. And I want to say that we have support in my Department of Social Services. We now have a counseling unit. Unfortunately, we have 2 persons in that unit who are trained at the master's level. I know they would have done some work during the height of the pandemic, during the height of the lockdowns, because some persons were not taking it so well psychologically, and so they needed some assistance, which was willingly given by the counseling unit, Mr. President. And so I want just to say here that we do have a counseling unit in the Social Services Department now, and we take referrals from other departments. So if any department have issues where any of their staff need counseling, please feel free to contact us at Social Services, and we will be very willing to assist you. Mr. President, as we look forward to 2021, we will continue with our programs at that Yes to Success program. We will expand on what we're doing there. And of course, we have to continue with the fabulous programs we're doing with our seniors. And the RISE program, where we touch so many unfortunate lives, that will continue. We will continue to service persons who need counseling. And of course, the less fortunate, we will continue to look after you as well. And of course, we'll continue to partner with our international and regional organizations. Mr. President, let me now turn to culture, because I have quite a ministry. Mr. President, I guess you're going to hear this word COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic too often during this budget, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And so, at culture and at NCDF, we had to scale back as well. However, we decided we have to be relevant and stay relevant. And so, we did some things that were different, that were not normally done. Of course, you know that the staff at the NCDF, we normally go to the schools, we normally go to the communities. The protocols didn't allow us to do that. And so we were able to tailor our programs. But at the same time, we were able to do what we had to do. And so we were able to do some tutorials, which were placed on the NCDF Facebook page. So, instead of going out to the schools and teaching them on the spot, the tutorials were done by members of staff and placed on the Facebook page. We were able to do several performances and presentations as well. And one of the highlights of what we did during the past months is an initiative that we call Black, hosted at NIPAC for a couple of weeks, bringing life and culture. And that what that intended to do, Mr. President, and what it did, is that it was trying to highlight the culture of Nevis. Highlight the culture of Nevis. And showcase the culture and talent of Nevisians, Nevis and Nevisians, to not only to the Federation, not only regionally, but also to the diaspora as well. So we had this thing happening at NIPAC every Thursday night, which was beamed throughout the world on all the various social media platforms. And the performances were taking place there at NIPAC. And so we were able to highlight and showcase our artists in gospel, soca, calypso, reggae. We were able to showcase some of our fashion designers and so on. And so persons were able virtually to get a platform, and many, many persons overseas in the diaspora who may not have known of the talent that is existing here were able to see that on display during the performances of that initiative called Black. And I want to commend Kareem Herbert for, he was the brainchild behind this initiative, and I think the initiative went well. It was able to get good feedback from overseas, and so irrespective of the fact that you couldn't have a full house at NIPAC, you had a full house virtually. And strange enough, Mr. President, strange enough, since these activities and these functions are being beamed all over virtually, a lot more people are actually seeing what's happening, A lot more persons are actually logging on than if you were just going to have a function at NIPAC and just 200 people see it. Thousands of people are logging on nowadays. And so, even though we have these issues and these bad experiences with COVID, there are some little good patches as well. And so many people around the world were able to see what's happening with our culture and our life here on the island of Nevis. Mr. President, I must also indicate that the NCDF is also involved in a mini-series in the production of a film entitled The Hunter's Dance, and that is focusing on the masquerade theme. And once that is finished, we're going to have some episodes, and it's going to be beamed as well on all of the social media platforms. The NCDF is also involved in something called the Intangible Cultural Heritage Project. It's a UNESCO project. And it is a project that involves the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And it is a project, as I said, funded by UNESCO, but it is seeking to harness the various cultural practices in St. Kitts and Nevis. Intangible things, things you can't see, things you can't touch. And we have been working with the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society jointly on this end of the Federation on that project. And Mr. Howell, there at NCDF, is now the focal point for that. Now, Mr. President, we know for a fact that Culturama this year was cancelled. And every time the Premier speaks, he always said that I used the wrong word, because I said postponed, when it should have been cancelled. But whatever it was, Culturama 46 was postponed. Culturama 2020 was cancelled. That is a fact. And even though the festival was cancelled, people were asking and begging for something to happen on the Emancipation holiday weekend, Culturama Monday and Tuesday. And we were able to put something together in Nevis. The NCDF and the Culturama Secretariat, we were able to put some stuff together. And so we were able to have a little some performances here in the heart of Charlestown on Culturama Monday and Tuesday. So I must give credit to the NCDF and the Festival Secretariat. And as we talk about the Festival Secretariat, Mr. President, we were gearing up for what would have been a spectacle for Culturama 46, but COVID had different ideas. But irrespective of the fact that we had to shelve Culturama 2020, the Culturama Secretariat is still working. Because as we always say, the situation is fluid. Situation is fluid, and we don't know what is going to happen next year, but we are still planning. We are planning in earnest and hoping that the situation would get better in 2021. And we are hoping that we'll be able to host the festival next year. And so in looking towards hosting the festival next year, we will continue to promote Culturama 2021 in hopes that it can happen. We will be finalizing our 2021 marketing plan very soon. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But we are hoping it will happen. And the Culturama Secretariat is also working with a save the date poster that will be released soon as well, where they will be asking you to save the dates for Culturama 2021. That's Culturama 46. And of course, this year, Mr. President, before we had to shelve the festival, we already had people who were coming forward as contestants. And so the search will continue for contestants for next year, in all hope that the festival could take place. And so if there are persons out there who are listening or viewing, and you might be interested in one of the pageants, you can still sign up at the Culturama Secretariat, hoping that we will have a festival in 2021. And so, even though we were unable to host the festival this year, the Festival Secretariat continues to work and continues to work diligently in all hopes that we will stage the festival next year. I'm also pleased to announce as well, Mr. President, that the Festival Secretariat would have partnered with other departments in hosting some activities this year. The Festival Secretariat would have partnered with NIPAC in hosting the Black, which I spoke about a while ago. It would have partnered with the Nevis Tourism Authority in hosting the Nevis Song Competition. And it would have partnered with the Department of Agriculture for the Taste of Nevis. And of course, you'll hear a lot more about the Taste of Nevis when the member for Nevis 4 comes tomorrow. All right? So, Mr. President, we will continue to work hard and try our utmost that in case we are able to have the festival next year, that we are ready. Mr. President, I also want to speak about a committee that has been working diligently for the island of Nevis, a committee called the World Heritage Committee, which is under my purview. Now, Mr. President, this World Heritage Committee would have been formed in 2017, before I became Minister of Government. And it was formed in 2017 under the leadership of Mrs. Evelyn Henville. And the goal of the committee really was to have the inscription of the city of Charlestown as a World Heritage Site, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And people may ask, why you want Charlestown as a UNESCO World Heritage Site? Mr. President, there are so many benefits that can be derived if Charlestown or any part of Nevis becomes a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Mr. President, tourism will continue to boom. And a lot of attention will be paid to this island if we have UNESCO inscription. I'm sure you realize, Mr. President, that wherever in the world you go, and there is a UNESCO inscribed site, that site normally gets a lot of attention. We have a site in the sister island of St. Kitts, Brimstone Hill, and practically everybody who comes to St. Kitts wants to go to Brimstone Hill. Because the message is out there that Brimstone Hill is a UNESCO inscribed site, a World Heritage Site. And so if we can get Charlestown or any part of Nevis inscribed as a UNESCO site, that will do wonders for us, Mr. President. And so this committee is working overtime to try our utmost to get Nevis inscribed, or some part of Nevis inscribed by UNESCO. Now, as a part of the effort, in 2018, the International Council on Monuments and Sites, ICOMOS, they would have visited Nevis. And initially, the push was for historic Charlestown to be inscribed. ICOMOS would have come, they would have visited Charlestown, they would have visited other sites on the island. Unfortunately, based on their assessment, Charlestown did not have enough in terms of the integrity and authenticity and universal value. Those are the kind of words that they use. And so, however, they would have indicated to us that even though Charlestown itself did not qualify, you have enough sites on Nevis that you can come back and ask again. And so the committee continued to work, and they would have gone back to UNESCO, because we don't want to rest until we get a UNESCO inscription. So they would have gone back to ICOMOS. After the ICOMOS would have come here for that upstream process first, they would have gone back. ICOMOS would have made certain recommendations in terms of our history and our heritage. These are some of the things you can do. These are some of the sites you can put forward. And so they continue to work on a list of sites on Nevis that have been put forward and will be put forward again to UNESCO for possible inscription. And as a part of that thrust, Mr. President, my Ministry of Culture would have facilitated the visit of 2 persons here to Nevis, and that would have taken place in February. 2 British heritage specialists in Barry Gamble and Paul Simons. They would have come. They would have visited our sites. They would have visited Bath Hotel. They would have visited Bath, the Bath Springs. They would have visited the fort. And they would have said to us that you all are sitting on a gold mine here. And so they would have made some recommendations as well. We are working on those recommendations. And so we are using the recommendations from ICOMOS, the recommendations from these specialists, and we have actually sent back something to ICOMOS. And in essence, what we have said to them, well, since you are not going to inscribe historic Charlestown, we're going to come back with something called Nevis, Charlestown, and its environs. Because what the persons from ICOMOS would have also told us that there are numerous sites, including some of our historic churches, that could be part of this inscription. And so we continue to work diligently. And so I want to say kudos and commendation and thank you to the members of the committee for your voluntary service. And I want to especially single out Mrs. Evelyn Henville, because I don't think there's anybody in Nevis as passionate about, as Mrs. Henville, about our history and heritage. So she's very, very passionate about this. And I believe with the passion that this committee has, the hard work that they're putting in, the commitment and the dedication to what they're doing, I believe, Mr. President, in the future, we will get UNESCO inscription. I also want to assure members of the committee that in the new year, Mr. President, we will be coming to this House with an ordinance to establish the Nevis Heritage and Conservation Trust. Because we want to ensure that our sites on the island of Nevis are preserved and we want to ensure that they have good oversight. And as a matter of fact, that is a recommendation from UNESCO itself, that we establish a trust. That is a recommendation, a firm recommendation from UNESCO. UNESCO wants to see that we are serious about business, and this government is serious about this. And so I want to assure the members of the committee that you have the full support of this administration. You have the full support of this ministry as you go forward with your work and as we continue to try to get UNESCO inscription for Nevis. I also want to assure the committee as well that whether or not there is a line item in the budget for you, you will get the support from my ministry. The support has always been there, and the support will be forthcoming in 2021. Mr. President, the Department of Information, which also falls under my purview, is a department that has been providing yeoman service for the island of Nevis. It's because of the Department of Information why people from all over the world can be looking at me here in this honorable house making this presentation today. It is because of the Department of Information why the mover of the bill was able to stand here and bring such a wonderful budget fit for purpose yesterday. And it is because of the work of the Department of Information why all of these presentations we are getting from us on the government side and from the member opposite, it is beamed all over the world. And Mr. President, I must give high kudos and commendation to the department because during the lockdowns as well, the department was considered as an essential service. And so during that lockdown period of the pandemic, we had a core group of staff members from that department who were there on the job 7 days a week. Because you know, during the lockdown period and during the height of the pandemic, people wanted to get information. Information had to go out on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And so the Department of Information had to be there to get that information out, of course, apart from the other media houses and social media, to get the message out. And they would have partnered with the Ministry of Health in bringing all of the EOC briefings. Because at one point in time, Mr. President, as the defeated president of the US, Trump, would say, all you were hearing was COVID, 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 COVID. That's all you were hearing on the news. And so the Department of Information was there to bring those messages to the members of the public, keeping us up to date on what was happening, keeping us up to date on what we needed to do to keep ourselves safe and the country safe. And so, apart from just partnering with the Ministry of Health, they would have partnered with a number of other government departments in ensuring that the messages from these departments got out and got to where they were supposed to go. And so, I want to give high commendation to the Department of Information for playing that very important role during the pandemic. The pandemic is not over, but during the height of the pandemic, in ensuring that when the messages needed to get out, it got out. Now, Mr. President, the NTV, or Nevis Television, or the Department of Information, I'm sure a lot of us realize that many of our activities now from government are not just recorded and shown on the news at 7:30 or shown on the news some other time, or the entire programs come on some other time. A lot of our activities now, Mr. President, are beaming live. And during this year, this challenging 2020 COVID year, the department would have done an unprecedented number of live programs. And I'm just going to run through a few of them, Mr. President, because they did so many, that you can hardly count. And so they would have facilitated live broadcasts of so many things, including the emergency sitting of the Assembly on the 18th of April, the National Assembly election results, the Nevis Mango Festival cook-off on July the 4th. We would have hosted a number of town hall meetings, all of those were carried live, the primary school graduation ceremonies, the NIA Thanksgiving service on July the 19th. We had a special sitting here to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Christina disaster. Of course, we know that the Premier hosts a press conference every month, and those go live as well. Our Emancipation Day activities that I spoke about on August 3rd and 4th, the Youth Impact 12, which I spoke about earlier as well, Independence Award ceremony, Department of Agriculture food demonstration, the Ministry of Agriculture fourth quarter report, the Department of Agriculture Minister's cook-off, the Department of Gender seminar on budgeting, and the Barnes Got Breadfruit Festival. These are just to name a few of the things that have been beamed live throughout this year, Mr. President. And of course, we know as well that apart from doing these live streaming events, we know that the Department of Information is responsible for bridging the gap between the government departments and the members of the public. Because it is because of the Department of Information and the fantastic work they're doing why most of what we are doing as an administration and most of what is happening on the island of Nevis, persons can sit back in the comfort of their homes every night, Monday to Friday, and look at the news at 7:30. And I have to say here, Mr. President, because I have to come to the defense of the staff at NTV. Because what they do at NTV and the Department of Information is very technical. And I can speak because I've had some training in editing and videography. And it is not an easy task. And now and again, mistakes will be made, Mr. President. And, you know, here on the island of Nevis, people always look for something bad to happen. And they always look for the mistakes. They never say when something good is happening. But the moment a mistake is made, whether on the news or anywhere else, they are quick to criticize. And I just want to say here that most of us who are criticizing, if we are placed in the same position to do the job, we can't do it anyway. And we can't do it any better anyway either. And so I am asking members of the public to at least take a part sometime when there's a little mistake. Because as I said, I did editing. I did some training in Dominica many years ago. And I made mistakes too. To edit 1 minute PSA took me days. 1 minute. People are not aware of this. Because people don't know what goes on behind the scenes when you're preparing for the news and when you're editing stuff. I'm serious. To edit 1 minute PSA when I was in Dominica for that training, it took me days. Because I had to go and I had to shoot and I had to come into the studio and I had to go back out to shoot again to make sure you get everything right. Because when you're putting anything on television, you want to make sure that it is something that is pleasing to the eye. And so it is a lot of work. Sometimes they're under a lot of strain, under a lot of pressure to ensure that they meet the deadline of 7:30 to get the news on. So I just want to say to persons who criticize, you do not know what it takes to put a news package together. And so I want to commend the staff there at NTV. And I want to make an appeal as well. I want to make an appeal to the other departments of government. That when you're planning your activities and you want NTV to cover, do not wait until 9 o'clock and say, come to cover something for 10. That's not good. Because the fact is, most of these times, when the departments plan activities, they plan them in advance. They plan them a week in advance. They plan them a month in advance. But they will wait until the morning of the activity to call and say, well, I have something to cover. Remember that NTV and the Department of Information is covering all of the departments as you pull in your mic, Mr. President. So tell me what you want to tell me.
No, actually, your time is up.
I know that is what you're going to say. I'm going to ask for an additional 15 minutes. I'm going to wrap up soon. I could take another 30, but I want to take 15. I want to take about 15 more minutes, Mr. President. Right? I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to try to wrap up in 15 minutes.
The member has asked for an additional 50 minutes. Those in favor? Aye. Those against?
You were sharp in telling me my time went up, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. And so I just want to say that I want persons, the departments, when you're asking for coverage of these events, to have a little conscience and try to ask early o'clock. And of course, the department would have done some in-house training during the COVID lockdown as well. And they will continue to work in the future with all of the ministries. And since we're talking about coverage and so on, I just wanted to just quickly highlight as well some work happening in my communication unit of the Ministry of Social Development as well. We do have a communication unit. And of course, I have a very large ministry, and we are involved in so many things. And sometimes we want things covered. Sometimes the Department of Information may be busy, and we want something covered, because the Department of Information is stretched to cover all the departments. And so I'm happy I have a little communication unit that is very, very useful, and has been very, very proactive in covering all of the activities we undertake in my ministry. And so in a way, they complement the work that is being done. Because sometimes if something is happening in one of my departments and NTV cannot come, then my communication unit will be there to cover and then to send the footage on to NTV. So they work hand in hand. And I'm also pleased to say as well, Mr. President, that earlier this year, this communication unit would have launched a program for me called On the Move with Minister Evelyn. Because as I said, I have a very big, a very large ministry. I'm involved in a lot of things. And I am someone who likes to document things. Because, you know, sometimes accusations come say, you know, I do nothing. Well, once they're documented, I have the evidence to show that I'm doing. And doing even more than I should. So I like to have documentation. Ever since I was in agriculture, the minister could tell you, people used to tell me, Eric, every little thing you go on TV with. Well, you have to show the evidence. You have to show the evidence that you're working. And so I like to document what I do and what my ministry does. And so I have, thankfully, under my purview, Department of Information, and I have my little communication unit. Where one falls short, the other one picks up. And so it is important that we document things in the future. We said, this is what was done. Here is the evidence. It's here on camera, and you can't wipe this off. And so I want to commend the Department of Information, the communication unit as well, and I really want to thank them for the work that they have been doing. And Mr. President, as I said, I could go on and on and on, but time is of the essence now. And so I want to wrap up shortly, and I just want to say a hearty thank you to my ministry. I want to thank all of the departments, all of the department heads and their staff for the work that you have done in this challenging and difficult 2020. I also want to say a very hearty thank you to my ministry staff. I want to thank the PS, Mr. Glasgow, the assistant PS, Ms. Michelle Liburd, to the ladies in my office, Shelley Liburd and Natasha Clark. And of course, I want to say thanks to Cheryl, who keeps my office spotless, and to Donnet as well, who's a new member, relatively new member of staff. And I also really want to thank all of the ministries and departments that have collaborated with us over the past months, because government is about working together. Government is about collaborating. No ministry is an island. No department is an island. And we need to work together. We need to collaborate. And I've had good collaboration over the past months, and I must say thanks to all of the departments and ministries for their fantastic collaboration. And I do look forward to that collaboration in 2021 and beyond. I also want to thank all of the stakeholders. Of course, we touch a lot of lives, we touch a lot of organizations, and a lot of persons, a lot of organizations and stakeholders collaborate with us as well, and I really want to thank them as well. Before I leave, Mr. President, I also wanted this time to heartily congratulate the students who are graduating this week. We would have had 2 graduation ceremonies at the Charlestown Secondary and Sixth Form College yesterday. So I want to extend warm congratulations to them. We're having another graduation ceremony tomorrow at the David Freeman Center of Excellence for the Gingerland Secondary School. I want to say congratulations to them as well. And we can be very proud of the accomplishments of our young people. Mr. President, before I sit as well, if you could indulge me for just another minute or two. This 2020 has been a strange year in so many ways. Apart from the COVID-19 pandemic, recently we've had a lot of deaths, a lot. And almost every day we are hearing of someone passed on. We've had some sudden deaths. We've had a lot of young persons who would have passed on, some from my constituency. But we would have had some recently that I just wanted to extend condolences to the families, Mr. President. One such is the family of the late Claudine Doris Claxton from Brown Hill, someone who I worked with at the Department of Agriculture for a number of years, and someone who was a delight to work with, a very pleasant person, someone who had the utmost respect for everyone. And I just want to extend heartfelt condolences to, in particular, the children, Carl and Colin, and the entire family. And just to say that you had a wonderful mother, and she will be missed. And of course, you would have heard of the passing of Kathleen Cranston as well, from there in Government Road. She was one of our seniors who was there at our seniors programs, always there, always very happy to attend our programs. We are going to miss her from our seniors program, someone who was full of life, always smiling. And I want to extend condolences to Lovell and the rest of the family. And I have to say as well that she was a huge supporter of our party. And I want as well to extend condolences to the family of the late Olivia Maynard from my constituency. She would have passed on Monday. And I know it is a very difficult period, in particular for the principal of the Gingerland Secondary School. She has graduation tomorrow, and she has the death of her mother to deal with. And so I want to extend condolences to Mrs. Williams, Lynette, and Jackie, and the rest of the family, the entire family, and her very loving husband, Norman, because I spoke to Mr. Maynard, and he said, well, listen, Eric, we have been together for 60 years. And for you to have a partner for 60 years and to lose a partner, it's difficult. So I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the Maynard family, the extended family, the church family, and all of our friends as well. And may God comfort all of you who are mourning, these families and all the other families who are mourning at this time. I extend heartfelt condolences to you, and may God give you the strength and the mercy to go on at this point in time. Mr. President, I want at this time now to say what a pleasure it has been to lend my support to this budget. I want at this time to, as we usher in the Christmas season, Christmas that will be very different this year, to extend warm holiday greetings. May this be a very happy and holy season for you, Mr. President, for my colleagues on the government benches, to the member opposite, to the clerk, to the sergeant at arms, to the officer, to the young lady sitting right there, the members of the press, and to all who are listening and viewing. I wish you a very happy and holy season. I want us during this season to kindly remember the less fortunate and the underprivileged. I want you to give who do not have, to who do not have, and let us help those who are in need. And of course, I would hope that 2021 will be a year that will be healthy and will bring abundant blessings for all of us. Mr. President, with these words, I want to wish this bill safe passage through this honorable House. May it please you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I rise to seek your leave for the adjournment of this honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, the 10th day of December.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion.
Question is that this House be adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. That is the 10th of December. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House is adjourned.